So I pledge of allegiance
To
to
the
the
flag
flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for all.
Well done. So real briefly, just some administrative, the minutes, Janelle, I shared with you some comments. Do any other planning board members have any comments, edits, and or corrections to the minutes from the February 2nd meeting?
I had one typo that I found, which maybe you addressed, David, but on page 2, section 5, lot line adjustment subdivision for Sailor Mill, that first paragraph, second sentence, he explained that he is here to assist in going over the part 2 of the EAF.
I'm sorry, Heidi, what paragraph?
It's the first paragraph of section 5 on page 2. The
Okay,
paragraph that starts with co-chairman Sorbellini asked. The second sentence there says he explained that he is here to assist in going over, should be the part 2 of the EAF.
I see it.
Anyone else?
Dave, I know you turned in a couple. I just had another. There's
I think Dave just had one, right, on page 8?
I did,
Oh.
yes. And it was just an
okay.
immaterial typo, yeah.
Page 3, the very last sentence of the second paragraph down.
Okay,
Co-chairman Sorbellini suggests that they move forward to go through.
okay,
To move forward and go through the draft.
okay.
That's minor, very minor.
Yeah, mine were the same. Anyone else?
I actually had one other little one, and I'm not sure if this was a typo, if I'm misremembering. This was also on page 2, regarding the public hearing for Rice Plumbing. It's the paragraph that starts with Miss Salazar,
Mm-hmm.
and about 3/4 of the way down, we talk about how the parking regulations, it says, it states zoning ordinance requirement shows 11 spaces, and then parking spaces planned shows 1. But I think that should be 8, if
No.
I'm understanding that note correctly. No?
No, we were saying that her application was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the number 1 on her application.
Yeah, that was the
So
prior
she needed to
incorrect.
correct that.
I thought she had 11 and we were changing it to 8. I'm sorry. Okay, I misunderstood.
No, I guess 11 was listed as the zoning requirement, what you needed, which was wrong. And then she had under planned, she just
1.
had 1, but she actually,
Ah,
so she has now since corrected that, and I've just sent that off to everyone, the corrected.
Yeah, I saw that.
okay, great. Okay, sorry. Thank you for the clarification. I totally misread that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, anyone else from the board have a comment or suggestion on the February 2nd minutes?
Nope.
All right, well, I'll just continue with the repetitive compliment, but Janelle, an excellent professional job of capturing succinctly the occurrences of our last meeting. So thank you very much for your attention to detail. So with that, I will make a motion that we approve the minutes with the suggested edits stemming from the February 2nd planning board meeting. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Nick will second.
Nick,
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? No nays, and please show that Helene Grant is absent.
yes,
Okay. So with that, moving with brevity at 7:04, we have SP 7-20 Bread Alone, located on 3962 Route 28 in Boyceville. Our goal this evening, in the next 5 minutes, is to just take a look at the plat, if the board members haven't already done so. I believe we all have hard copies, so thank you, Janelle. So Ms. Leader, are you on the line?
she was there. I don't know if she's
Oh,
muted.
yes, she would be. She
Hi,
should
I
be able
see
to
you
unmute
waving.
herself.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna open it up to the floor. I think where we left it, there were just some modest modifications around, I think, the northeast corner, the parking. I know Heidi, you had brought up something with the capturing the water that I believe was addressed at the tail end of our last meeting. And I don't recall if there were any other things we needed addressed. So please speak up. And our goal is to come to an agreement if we're ready for a public hearing on our next scheduled meeting, which I believe would be Tuesday, March 2nd, I believe.
I believe the main thing was the design and where the rain gardens / catch basins were going to be.
Thank you, Steve.
We also asked them to tabulate the parking spaces and do those calculations based on our zoning. And that's in the lower left-hand corner of the first sheet, the site plan. So that's been done.
Thank you.
And on the water, I would note that it appears, at least to me, that on the main plat that was provided, that the rain garden locations, et cetera, don't appear to have been updated to match what's on the other maps for the drainage. The main map being the one that says for, I think, permit purposes only. The overall map.
So Sharon, Ms. Leader, is there someone that's joining? you?
Yes, I would ask that you unmute Chris Smaler, CSMAILER.
Done. Or I request they there.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so the stormwater pollution prevention plan is the most up-to-date current in the rain garden locations. And that one, that plan shows the locations of the rain gardens at the easterly portion of the north lot where the handicap spots are, as well as a rain garden to the east of the employee parking lot on the south of the site.
Chris, are those details on sheet 2 of 3? Is that where we should be looking on our
Yeah,
plan set?
sheet 2 of 3 is the stormwater plan, and then you'll see some of the notes as far as what the different structures or elements are, as D3 or A2, and then on sheet 3, it elaborates what the rain garden components are.
So can we get an updated site plan that reflects that then before? I'll say
Before
the
the-
March
Yes,
meeting.
definitely.
Steve, just can you just clarify? So on page 1, the rain garden, I'm just going to point to the one above the parking calculations that Ed referenced. You're saying that should be updated? Am I following you?
The rain garden is in a different place now, if you look at the stormwater maps.
Yep.
And there's also a rain garden up where but just below the employee parking that's not shown on the site plan map.
Oh, I find you. Okay, oh yeah, it's like a little hockey stick up there. I got you. Okay, yeah.
Yep, so we can certainly update the site plan to match the stormwater, but the stormwater is the governing document at this point.
Yeah, it's just for the public hearing. We'd like people to have the site plan map to look at and be completely
Absolutely.
correct.
While you're at it, Chris, put a north arrow on that site plan while you're at it.
Will do.
Yeah, Chris, do you have our town's checklist for making sure that all the elements are listed?
I'm sure if we don't have it, I can download that. That's
Okay, yeah, just signature blocks and all that good stuff. Okay. Tim, Nick, I'm sorry to call you guys out by name. Heidi, any comments?
No.
No.
So Chris, okay, thank you. Chris, if you could connect with Janelle,
you will.
at least 10 days, at least, I'm sorry, 14 days before March 2nd, make sure she has updated copies.
Absolutely.
I would make a motion on behalf of the board in this last moment we have here that we move forward with a public hearing for Bread Alone on March 2nd, and let's do it at 7:10 PM.
Second.
Can I get? Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please show Helene Grant is absent again.
Aye.
All right, and with that, it's now, oh,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Chris,
you
and,
so much, and hopefully your evening goes swiftly.
Thank you, Ms. Leader. So with that, it's 7:10 PM on Tuesday, February 16th. We are now going to open a public hearing for 20 sub 10 Sailor Mill Farm located at Lower Sailor Mill Road and Olive Bridge. It is a major subdivision of 64.348 acres. This public hearing is to address the seeker component of the major subdivision. And at this point, I'm going to open the floor to our professional consultant, Catherine. Are you out there?
I am. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Hi, Miss Sarah. Thank you.
My name is Catherine Sarah. I'm an engineer and project manager with T-Mail Associates. We have been hired by the town of Olive to provide consulting services for review of this project from an engineering and planning perspective. Also from CT Mail tonight is Chris Koenig. He is our planner and environmental scientist. So just the format of the meeting, I think many of you have already seen the just the general information on the website, but I'll read those. So again, this is a public hearing. This is considered a seeker public hearing. So the project is in the, we'll say, middle stages of review. The engineering environmental review has commenced, but the project is not at final design at this point. So I believe many of you have already messaged the town planning board. We do have a list. And when it's your turn to speak, you will be let in to speak. We do know who generally will be presenting items, and we're aware if you're presenting. If you have not already reached out to the town to be put on a list to speak, please use the chat bar just to identify your name. Please try to keep the chat bar just to state if you would like to speak. The planning board secretary will be taking minutes. And if there's a lot of back and forth in the chat bar, it's simply not productive. The comments have to be taken in a public setting, and the chat bar in Zoom does not count as a public comment. So again, when it's your turn to speak, you'll be allowed to unmute. Please identify yourself by name and address for the record. There is a 5-minute limit. So I will be giving you a warning at the 4-minute. I'll just interject and say 1 minute left. If you do have more to say, just please submit it in writing. All submissions will be read. Please no foul language, swearing or cursing, and no insulting or offensive remarks. For the sake of time, there are about 100 of you on the call at this point. For the sake of time, we would just ask to try not to repeat express comments. If the comment has already been stated, just simply state that you agree with the previous comment. It does help move the meeting along. That way everyone does have their time to speak. Please understand this is simply for the planning board to hear your comment. Please don't expect responses to the remarks tonight. There is no back and forth between the public and the applicant or planning board. Any clarifying questions that can be easily responded to by the board or applicant may be addressed. I like to say, someone has a question, where is this project located? How many houses are proposed? Is there an additional public hearing? Very much yes, no responses we will respond to, but otherwise, this is a listening session for the planning board. And the planning board will address all questions in time. We're looking at possibly trying to conclude the public hearing at 9 p.m. today. Again, for time's sake, we will discuss that as the night goes on. And again, I will only interject at the time mark. And again, if it's a simple yes, no question, but otherwise the first discussion will be had with any planning board members quickly, and the applicant is going to do a brief presentation of the proposed project so that you folks on the call can see the project if you have not seen it before.
So Ms. Sarah, Catherine, thank you very much for going over that and framing the, if you will, the parameters for the productive discussion this evening or public hearing discourse. And with that, I would defer back to Frank Dunn and his panel, if you will, to provide their opening comments / narrative around the project.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Rick, George, and I purchased this property of 6.34 acres from Randy and Ernie Everson, who moved here with their parents in 1961. The family has owned it for nearly 60 years. Lower Sailor Mill Road passes through the middle of our property, giving us 2/3 of a mile of road frontage. We didn't design the layout of our lots on paper. We designed them by walking the property, looking at the natural features, the existing old stone walls, and taking into account the environmental issues of the land. We also looked at the adjoining parts of Marbletown with its 3-acre zoning and Rochester with its 2-acre zoning. Our land in Olive is 1-acre zoning. Our plan shows 13 home sites. Our lots range from 3 to 10+ acres, with an average at 4.95 acres, which is almost 5 times larger than the required 1-acre zoning. The south side of the road has a ridge paralleling and sloping up from Sailor Mill Road and then sloping down to the Pacoma Bly. We have placed 6 houses on that ridge, 4 in the fields defined by the old stone walls, and 2 tucked into the wooded lots on that side. 2 of the field lots are where the barn and chicken coop previously stood, so essentially only 2 additional structures will be visible on the north side of the road compared to when we purchased the land. Our home sites exceed the 100-foot setback to mostly 200 feet from the Pacoma Bly. All the septic fields and water drainage systems are placed on the opposite side of the ridge towards the road away from the Pacoma Bly. On the north side of the road, we are showing 7 home sites, 4 in the field lots defined by the old stone walls, one of which is where the original house stood. The 3 other homes are placed into the tree line on the wooded lots. At the rear of this side, but on the neighboring properties, is the Rochester Creek. We kept the houses a far distance from the creek, and in fact, a much further distance than the existing neighboring homes. Unlike our neighbors, none of our property has the Rochester Creek running through it. George and Rick have been building in the local community for 45 years. I have been working with them for 25 years. 3 other instances where we were in a position of subdividing land. Each time we went above the respective town's zoning requirements. Many of our proposed lots at Sailor Mill are larger than the neighboring lots that have been previously subdivided. Just west of us, on the north side of the road, there is a 2.7-acre property and 2 2-acre properties. It's not my point to call out any specific lots, but just to reference the fact that we are not creating lots that are alien to the neighborhood. And in many cases, our lots are larger than neighboring lots. So we wanted to make this very brief because tonight is about the public. I just wanted to lay down the facts about the 13 home sites. So back to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Frank? So with that, I think we have, I apologize, I'm trying to look at my screen here. Our first speaker is representing, I believe, the neighborhood group. And is it Miss Emily? I apologize. Is it Svensson? Awesome.
She should be able to unmute now.
Okay,
All right, thank you. You got it exactly right.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Emily Svensson. I'm an attorney representing a large group of residents who live in close proximity to the project site. Many of them are here tonight to speak. We thank you for holding this hearing. I submitted a letter today that reviewed both the legal standard for your seeker determination and also enumerated many of the environmental impacts the project poses. And based on that and the other materials we've submitted and the things that people will express this evening, I think it'll be clear that a positive declaration is required for this project because of the environmental impacts it poses. I'd just like to give a brief summary focusing on the legal standard. Just by the numbers, this is a big project. The site spans 64 acres of forest and pasture on a quiet country road. According to the latest stormwater plan, the project would disturb about 15 acres of land. It would add 13 new homes, and 13 new homes would increase the number of homes on Lower Sailor Mill Road by 43%. And of most concern, there's nothing like this in the surroundings. A development like this would introduce a suburban layout that's completely incongruous with this part of Olive. So the board's legal responsibility under seeker, right now you're at the threshold decision-making process. And in the words of the regulation, your responsibility is to decide whether, quote, the action may include the potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact. So again, if the action may include the potential for at least one impact, then you need to issue a positive declaration. And the courts have said that because the operative word is may, there's a relatively low threshold for a POSDAC. So when you do that, then the board will conduct an environmental impact statement process with the applicant. And the EIS has been described as the heart of seeker because that is where you get to dig into the impacts and find the best ways to overcome them. Again, a POSDEC is not a denial by any means. It's just an opportunity to get the best project possible. Seeker asked you to look at impacts to both the natural and the human environment. In November of 2020, we submitted a report by planner Ted Fink. I'll refer to that as the Green Plan report. And Ted is here tonight to speak to some of what's in that report. But I'll just point out that you now have a great new resource to look at natural resource issues in the newly adopted natural resources inventory that the town board just adopted, which corroborates a lot of what was in the Green Plan report. The NRI really shines a light on the Packham of Lye, and it's not just about the wetland itself, but the whole forest that surrounds the wetland. The forest surrounding the Packham of Lye has been mapped as a significant biodiversity area, and it's within the top 5% forest condition index in the Hudson Valley. So these are really special forests, and the applicant's habitat study was far too narrow to know what would be lost if that land is cleared. The site also slopes down to the Rochester Creek, which is a protected trout stream. It would introduce 13 new septic systems, 2 large stormwater basins, and acres of lawn that would all drain to the creek. So we'd encourage you to review the Green Plan report and the NRI to understand the resources at stake here. But equally important are the impacts to the human environment. Dropping a suburban development into a picturesque rural road in the Catskill Park would cause a drastic change to the character of Lower Sailor Mill Road. The seeker regulations list the relevant categories of impacts for you to consider. They include things like impairment of existing community or neighborhood character, substantial change in the intensity of the use of land, change in existing traffic levels. And again, the standard is simple. If you see the potential for even one significant adverse environmental impact, you must issue a positive declaration. Here there are impacts to forests, wildlife. Okay. Wildlife habitat, water resources, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. I just wanted to make a quick note about mitigation. The applicant has made overtures about conservation areas, but they actually don't cover very much. On the south side, the conservation area is mostly just the existing state protected wetland and buffer. And I also want to note that these are not conservation easements, which would be enforced by land trust. These conservation areas would only be enforced if neighbors decide to sue one another. And since it's unlikely these would be enforced, they're really just empty promises and they cannot be relied on as mitigation. So as a final note, I just want to note that seeker is context specific and it depends on this board knowing the local environment and knowing what would constitute a significant impact here in Olive. At the last meeting, board members rightly picked up on how the project—
Ms. Benson, your time's up. If you could just finish that.
Yeah, I'm just finishing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members rightly picked up on how a project of this size would affect the roads, the quiet atmosphere, the community character, et cetera. And no offense to your consultants, but while a 13-lot subdivision may be an everyday occurrence in a suburban community, it would have a much more significant impact in the rural part of Olive where it's proposed.
Ms.
And-
Svensson, you're at about 6 minutes. And again, just out of fairness, this is a 5-minute period, so.
Okay, well, you keep interrupting me, so it's kind of hard to finish. I'm just asking you to issue a positive declaration as required by law and take the time to look at take a hard look at the impacts and work through an EIS process to adjust the project to fit the site. Thank you. We've all been watching these meetings for months, so it's nice to finally have a chance to speak. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I don't have the list. So I guess David Edinger, do you want to proceed since you have the list or?
Yeah, certainly. Or I can chat you the next one, which is what I did here. But Ted Fink is who I have next on my list.
Okay, I apologize.
It's all right. It's hard to follow everything going on.
Yep. So Mr. Fink, if you would, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for conducting this hearing and giving a voice to the neighbors who are going to be impacted by this subdivision by getting their comments at the early stage of the seeker review process. I've spent more than 40 years planning and helping other municipalities. I'm often in Catherine's position. I've worked for more than 50 municipalities on thousands and thousands of new homes, but I did write a letter, as Ms. Svensson said, to you back in November, landing at least 12 environmental issues that, in my opinion, required a hard look under seeker, and that's at least 12 issues. Based upon my review of the EAF documents that were submitted most recently, doesn't seem to be happening to date. When I looked at the Part 2 EAF, there's about 120 questions on this form, and not one was answered as a moderate to large impact. There was only a handful of them that were small impacts. And basically, this is a euphemistic approach to a seeker review process. And I think it really overlooks issues that are of significance to the community. And I think it's important that the planning board take a hard look at these plans and make sure that the actions that you take are consistent with state law, as I outlined in my letter. Basically, the assessment of project impacts in my letter, it identified the state's rules on when an EIS applies. And so I think it's, going with a full seeker review process, like a positive declaration, as Ms. Svensson said, gives a more formal role to the neighborhood and their concerns. And we've got 100 people on this, this Zoom call. I think they all have concerns. And it's not just about anti-development or NIMBYism or anything like that, but it's about seeking a better plan on this and other development projects. I think it's important to note, too, that while no neighborhood can be exempt from change, one of the foundations of sound planning is that no neighborhood should experience sudden radical change like 13 new suburban style homes on a narrow and quiet rural road. And I'd like you to think about how this subdivision fits within Olive and with the residents' own desire to remain a rural community. It's all been expressed right within your comprehensive plan that was prepared back about 10 years ago. And if you look at this property in the context of other vacant or farm properties in the area, what happens when the owners of those properties also follow the lead by the plans now before you? Pretty soon, you're going to find that Olive's going to lose its rural character one lot at a time. So I thought, given the time constraints on tonight, it would be useful to follow up with just one of the issues that I had raised in my letter. The parts 1 and 2 EAF documents that were prepared so far state basically that there's going to be no increase in traffic and no real significant increase in traffic. And there was a one-page statement, a traffic report, that basically said that the 14 peak hour trips is an insignificant increase in traffic. This kind of data in this kind of a project is not particularly relevant to Lower Sailor Mill Road. We don't even know how many cars travel Lower Sailor Mill Road today. While we don't know the numbers, we do know that it's a low volume road that's not been designed to accommodate a lot of new vehicle trips each day. And a better measure of how the quality of life of residents that live in this area are going to be affected by this current project. It's a measure called Average Annual Daily Traffic, or AADT. And there's been no traffic counts that I know of that were performed on Lower Sailor Mill by either the applicant or the town. And I actually checked to see if there were any AADT traffic counts from the state or the county, and there are none for Lower Sailor Mill Road. But if we look at Upper Sailor Mill Road as an example, DOT.
Ted, sorry, I just want to interject, about 30 seconds left.
Okay, what I do want to say is that DOT in 2019, they found that there was an AADT of 36 vehicles per day. So if you extrapolate on the information that was provided by the Creighton Manning source that was used in the traffic data, there's going to be an increase of 140 vehicle trips per day. So what that actually means from a significant standpoint is that there's going to be a traffic increase on Sailor Mill Road if it compares with Upper Sailor Mill Road of about 260% each day on a rural road. And this is much more significant from the standpoint of the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists who have
We're past our time, Mr. Fink. I'm sorry, if you could just finish up.
Yep, that's okay. And so I just wanted to point out that's one of the areas that an EIS allows the planning board to drill down deeper, to take a look at the data, to take a look at the information, to assess that information, and to make a reasonable interpretation of that data and whether or not there's any changes that they can request the applicant to make in furtherance of better planning for this subdivision as well as others. Thank you.
Appreciate that insight, Mr. Fink. Thank you for your comments. They've been noted. So with that, I would ask that Mr., and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Mr. Cataldo, Robert Cataldo is next. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Robert Cataldo. I'm speaking for myself and my spouse, Arnaldo Vidal. We're representing a potential new resident to the Sailor Mill project. We live in New York City, Long Island City. We're both seniors, recently retired. I worked as a commercial architect and partner at Gensler, and Arnaldo led the International Students Program at FIT. We planned to build our retirement home at Sailor Mill Farm this spring, leave New York City and live full-time in Olive Bridge. We hoped to become contributing members of the community. We have a long history with Frank Dunn Architect and George and Rick Seafree of Seakill Builders. We bought a house designed and built by them in 2001 on Buck Road in Stone Ridge, and we owned that house for 12 years as weekenders. We read on the Keep Olive Rural website that the opposition is not opposed to Sailor Mill development, but wishes that it was more sensitive to the environment and the community. Regarding community, we've checked the tax rolls for Lower and Upper Sailor Mill roads. And in fact, a good many of the residents there aren't necessarily of the community at all. Some owners are trusts and LLCs. Others are from Brooklyn, Manhattan, Port Washington, Massapequa, and even Seminole and Miami, Florida, probably weekenders. Their home communities are elsewhere. Some in this opposition aren't even residents of Olive. What right should residents of Rochester, Marbletown, or elsewhere have to say about what goes on in Olive? I don't know. I don't know how this works. But Frank is truly of and by the local community. His family are dairy farmers who date back generations to the mid-1800s in Ulster County. Frank knows about local community. He left to go to architecture school at Syracuse, returned to design vernacularly sensitive homes here that reflect the rural architecture long associated with the area. Go visit Boyce Mill Road, Mill Rock Road, and Buck Road, where we used to live. Buck Road is considered one of the area's most beautiful roads, with a dozen homes built there by this team. These projects were completed sensitively, with sensitivity to the community, the natural beauty, and the environment. The way this team enhanced other communities, they will enhance Lower Sailor Mill too. Regarding the environment, this team hired all the required professional consultants and did their due diligence. They abided by the letter of the Olive Town law. In every category, the impact to the environment has been assessed by the professionals to be minimal. So what about these professionals' opinions are not proof enough for the opposition? How is that you know better? George, Rick, and Frank are not big developers. Had they been, they could have built 65 homes on 1 acre lots as of right. Olive zoning only requires 1 acre. What they're posing is actually underdevelopment. And as what Frank said before, 13 lots averaging 5 acres. Additionally, they are reserving 55% of this acreage as conservation area, never to be built, left green, regardless of wetlands or whatever. The opposition should be grateful that this development team is being here to do this work. It's likely that many in the opposition are actually living on farmland that long ago was subdivided just like Sailor Mill. They were able to build and buy their piece of rural homestead without objections from anyone. Given all of this, it's easy to conclude that you just don't want homes there. You just don't want us there. You want a limited community for yourselves now that you have yours, but no one else should. You want control over land that you do not own. If you had been challenged when you looked to buy in that area, the way you are challenging us now, you would understand how cold and unwelcoming this feels. It isn't community. And this timing setback has caused Arnaldo and me a lot of anxiety and stress, which we should not have to endure at this point in our lives. We are completely stuck. We are in limbo. Seakill should be building our home soon, but no. It makes us wonder, what kind of neighbors are you anyway? Contentious, litigious, unreasonable, selfish? Is this really the so-called Olive Bridge community that you tout? It doesn't feel like community or welcoming at all.
Mr. Cataldo, if you could just finish up, you just have a few seconds left. Thank you.
Try to see how it looks to us from the outside. It's not a good first impression. Frank and Seakill are operating openly and honestly about their intentions. I wish the opposition would do the same about theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cataldo, for your comments. Public, I have a public announcement to make.
Thank you so much, Frank said.
You're welcome. So I just, it's been brought to my attention that we are capped at 100 Zoom participants. We'll have to address that as a board and see what our next steps are, in terms of formulating our next action. So we are acknowledging that right now we're experiencing a cap of 100 Zoom participants. We apologize to those folks who are trying to get on, and if any of you can send that note to them, we apologize, but that's just a limitation that we're facing at this moment. So I guess Ms. Goldman or Mr. Goldman, I just wanted to let you know that, January. Okay, so with that, our next speaker is Francis and Danny Angulo. You're next, please. 5 minutes.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Francis, and Danny and I live on Mill Rock Road, about 1 mile from the proposed development. We drive by it every time we leave our house, which is not very often, but hopefully will be more frequently soon. Just to let you all know, I have reviewed the environmental assessment submitted by Seakill. I've done my best to understand local laws and the seeker requirements. I'm not a lawyer, so my statements are based on my understanding of that information and my general perspective. I'd like to start by saying that I'm from a small rural area of Northern California. I care a lot about how and why land is developed. Where I'm from, this was a constant conversation that I was also involved in as we fought off big box stores like Walgreens and Target from joining our small community in the mountains. And now, sort of more than ever, we're all called upon to protect delicate ecosystems and the environment. And I respect and recognize that. I'm passionate about things like alternative energy and electric vehicles and sustainable foods. I've made lots of bread for many of our neighbors, and I've visited our farms, and I'm quite keen on understanding our community as it exists today. And I'm here because I actually believe that the proposed project on Sailor Mill Farm balances our environmental responsibilities with the growing demand of people who want to join this beautiful place. My impressions of the assessment and the proposal are that at over 60 acres and 13 lots. This appears to be well within the subdivision requirements, as we heard from the previous speaker, almost averaging 5 acres per lot, which is larger than many of the homes we looked at in the year and a half we looked for a house before we moved here. With the largest lot being at over 10 acres in size. I've reviewed the zoning plans. I've walked the properties in person many times. I've had Frank explain to me the placement of the homes because we live very close to this development. We pass it a lot. We were also concerned about the potential for a suburban area, but all of those conversations, the placement of the homes in comparison to the environmental features, such as the nearby stream, which I have also observed, and the proximity of homes to each other. Based on all of my observations, based on the plans, it appears that a vast majority of this property will be preserved. It's also my understanding that several environmental professionals were consulted in the design of this proposal, including an archaeologist, an environmentalist, a high road geologist, which I learned about for the first time as someone who cares a lot about the underground water. Septic experts, obviously relevant legal counsel. And as you've heard, third-party experts hired by the planning board have also been consulted. And I believe that this is beyond sufficient evaluation for the environmental impact of this development in particular. There are over 160 acres for sale in this area on Zillow when I looked this morning, lots ranging from 2 acres in size to many over 40. There are many project opportunities in this area that could be developed by someone less sensitive to the region, less familiar with the traditions and respectful concerns of this community, and the careful and considerate plans proposed here appear to preserve and respect the region while satisfying the positive growth that we're seeing in this community. I've also reviewed the Keep Olive Rural website as I sought to form a full opinion about what the risks and concerns were. And while I've heard for the first time many sort of ambiguous claims of the potential environmental impact in this meeting, the Keep Olive Rural website lists none of these concerns and focuses primarily on the aesthetic and repetitive nature of the project rendering reference materials. And if you visited the site in person and reviewed the variety of plans and proposals that this development has proposed, I think you would see that suburban is a far cry from the characteristic of these lots and the homes that will be created here. The phrase on the Keep Olive Rural site that sort of sticks with me on what the real issue here is that it says our little battle is just the first shot over the bow. Firing shots at this project, I think, will hurt our town and our communities as we seek to accommodate more neighbors while preserving this beautiful area. And I'd like to close with this. Many of you live on developments much like the one proposed here. Many of you came from the city and probably even have apartments there. Most of you brought traffic when you came here, cleared trees, installed swimming pools, and not everyone would choose the color of choice that you chose for your home, the flags or political signs you post in your yard or the cars on your property. But this diversity and interesting mix of perspectives surrounded by nature is what makes this area quite beautiful. And I don't think we should be closing our doors on new neighbors with this keep out message. The development is conservative from a legal and environmental standpoint and also progressive from a social and economic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments, Ms. Angulo.
She did.
So with that, Ms. Pam and Chris Thorpe, the floor is yours. Pam or Chris, or both of you?
We're sorry, we're
we're
right
good.
here.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you so much for allowing us a moment to speak this evening. We wanted to be present to lend our support to Frank and the Seakill team. We actually do not live in the immediate area, but we live on Boyce Mill Road, which you've already heard from one of the previous speakers, is one of the developments that Frank and this team put together about 20 years ago. And we have lived in our home for almost 17 years. And, we just wanted to give a little bit of in terms of just sharing with you what an impact our community has had on our lives. We have 3 children. They have all been raised in this home. This home is our heart. And we live in an area that was developed by Frank and this team in a similar way. The lots are 3+ acres. We are on one very beautiful country road. I'm a runner, I'm out there all the time. And the way that the development was planned and put together was extremely thoughtful and really took into account nature and the environment. The houses are tucked into the tree line. it is really a beautiful environment, and it's a natural environment that has been unspoiled by the development and by these homes. And also, just on a personal note, we have wonderful neighbors, and I loved what the previous speaker just said. This is a community, and the work that Frank and the team did to plan so perfectly the way that these houses were put together created a community. And we have close friends on this road, and our children really do feel like this is their home. It is a safe road. We feel like, having neighbors looking out for one another, our homes are safe. We feel like, it is just truly a community. And that is because it was well planned and well put together, and really does, again, take into account the natural surroundings. It does not feel like a development. It feels like a community of beautiful homes in nature. And we're actually both originally Canadian, so we really do appreciate that and feel very much at home here. So we just wanted to lend our support to Frank and Seakill and the team, and share that this has really been a positive impact. Our home has just truly been so positive for us.
If there's 30 seconds left before we run out of time, I just want to say that the quality of the homes that have been built by this team is above average for the county and the town that we're in, and also all of where we travel through often. I think what people will find if they look really into the work that's been done is it's really improving the overall makeup of the town in the quality of the architecture, the way it's laid out. If you look at any of Frank's home and architecture, they're very beautiful and fit very much into the surroundings. In fact, that's how the design is. That's why it attracted people like us. And that's the way we preserve it. I want to also address one more thing about traffic in our neighborhood. Our experience is that the traffic that is brought in by our neighbors that we've seen grow over the years is very de minimis. There's really no impact from traffic that we would comment on.
Over 17 years.
Over
yeah.
17
Yeah.
years. Are there high school kids that rip down the road sometimes? Yep, but I can tell you they don't live around here. So I don't think it has anything to do with the new home development at all. Thank you.
Thank you
your
for the
time.
opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for your comments. And I guess I'll give you an A. Hey, thank you very much. So is Miss Sherry Enger Gottschalk on the line? Miss Gottschalk?
I'm here. Good evening. My name is Sherry Enger Gottschalk. Our property is at 175 Salem Mill Road, which is adjacent to this project. Our family has owned and lived on this property for 89 years. My father's first visit was when he was 2 weeks old. I've been here 67 years. As we drive by daily on Salem Mill Road, we are taken back, embarrassed, and disappointed by Keep the Olive Rural signs. The message we, as well as many of our friends and family, interpret is, go home, you're not welcome, we don't want change. Friends and family who come to visit immediately ask, why the signs? We show them the Salem Mill farm property, and then they ask, well, what's wrong with these people with the signs? I answer, there's nothing wrong with these people. I don't know if they have the full picture of what the property was like many years ago, and I don't know if they know exactly what's being done now. I say, I think people are wary of change, and when they can't have a say in what's going on or control it, there's opposition to it. I suggest to those who are opposed to the Salem Mill Farm project to please understand what's important to our area. Derelict, rundown, abandoned, dangerous properties, which are on the road, are not what we want. Our family has been close friends of the Iversons, the Merryhughs, the Katzes, the Labanoses, the Cummings, the Rabaglias, the Finelli, the Salzman family. My father has spent time with the residents at Father Divine's property. There have been many changes during the 89 years. There will be more changes to come, but change can be positive. The Merryhughs were one of the first farms in the area. They sold off property on Salem Mill Road for new home construction. Lavanosos had sold off quite a few parcels of their property for new homes to be built. This has been a small community which has welcomed change. has welcomed new residents. Just as my family was welcomed 89 years ago, let's welcome new residents today. All of a sudden, there's no welcoming but a division. Us against them against us, a determination of no changes, keep out, not in our neighborhood. The Iverson property has not been lived on for quite some time. And typically, it's difficult to pay taxes, care for upkeep, etc. on property which is not being used. I am grateful that Randy and Ernie Iverson have sold their property to Frank Dunn and team. The size of the property could certainly have had more houses built on it, more forest removed, and become a McMansion cul-de-sac with no respect for the property or our area. Instead, Frank Dunn and team have put a lot of artistic integrity into their plans. The beautiful vistas, the breathtaking mountain views of Slide and High Point, along with the beautiful sunsets, have been taken into account when planning these new homes. There has been absolutely no clear cutting, but instead removing of overgrown shrubs and trees, which have grown uncontrolled during the past few decades. These fields were truly fields with no shrubs nor trees. The Sail Mill Farm is restoring the natural beauty to this property. The stone walls which divided the various fields have been kept intact. We are grateful to the attention to detail of the beauty and charm that this property has possessed for over hundreds of years, and we will be able to appreciate it once more. We are grateful for the vision that Frank Dunn and his team have to bring to the beauty, which once was the Hook Farm and then the Iverson Farm. I have memories of spending many days on the property, playing, skiing in the hills, feeding the chickens, the ducks, the rabbits, the goats, hanging out with Randy and Ernie. But in recent years, the property has become overgrown, building derelict, falling apart, burglarized, fire set, garbage tossed at her passing cars, trespassers shooting up the buildings and walking through the properties. At that time, there was nobody interested in buying the property to restore it as an operational farm. I am grateful to Randy and Ernie that their property was sold to somebody who would not be building 20, 30, 40 homes. There are no McMansions going in. The property is now beginning to resemble the rural beauty that we recall for so many years. The Enger family welcomes Frank Dunn and team. They have been open, friendly since day one. They are respectful of our proximity to the working area and work being done. They ask about our concerns about the noise, the building, traffic. They have shared their plans. They have given us tours. We have met the new neighbors and we
Pardon me,
welcome
Ms.
them.
Gottschalk. Pardon me, your 5 minutes is up. So if you could just wrap it up, please. Sorry.
Okay, we welcome them with open arms and open hearts, and we hope you will too. They have expressed a desire to be good neighbors. We welcome them and are grateful for their presence. We are looking forward to a growing community with a healthy gathering of individuals and families. I ask, please have a generous heart, have an open heart, which will help make our community one that is welcoming, friendly, and healthy. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, our next speaker will be Miss Emily Dindile. I apologize again if I mispronounced that. And just on deck, because I know this gentleman has a presentation, is Mr. Monteleone, Philip. So you'll be up next. So Miss Dindile, the floor is yours. 5 minutes, please.
Hi, we actually submitted a written comment and a lot of the previous speakers already touched on our points. So we'll try to just quickly summarize that we are in support of this. We are Kerhonkson residents actually, but we do live on Boyce Mill Road, like Pam and Chris, and are just here to say that one of the reasons we chose this house, we moved from Sampsonville Road in Kerhonkson, where there are a lot of 1 acre, 2 acre plots, one right after another. We chose this road because of how beautifully it was designed by Frank and his team, the way that they built a similar development with a bunch of homes, but preserved the land. And before we lived here, we would go out of our way to drive on this road, to walk on this road. So maybe the traffic thing is the thing, but no, I'm just kidding. We love it. And we, think that's because more than just the house is beautiful, but it really is about how thoughtful he was about preserving the surrounding area, the integrity of the scenic country roads that there really aren't too many of anymore. And if 64 acres of land is going to be sold to someone, I just don't think you could get really better than Frank, a local architect who grew up here, you know, who went out of his way to make a career about preserving these country roads, building homes that are contextually appropriate for the area. And, you know, on a plot that any other developer without a personal connection to the area could be building 2 or 3 times or more as many homes that are 2 or 3 times the size. And we just encourage anyone to drive by Boyce Mill Road, take a look for yourselves. We're happy to talk to any neighbors that want to hear about our experience here. And we just hope that you'll consider working with him on this. And we think that people will really end up enjoying it. Thank you very much for letting us speak.
No, you're welcome, and thank you for your comments. So with that, Mr. Monteleone, I believe I saw you there. The stage is yours, so the floor is yours.
And you should be able to share your presentation.
Here we go. Hi, my name is Philip Monteleone. My wife Carol and I live on Lower Sailor Mill Road, less than half a mile from the proposed subdivision. We bought our land over 30 years ago because of the quiet charm of this part of Olive Bridge. For over 10 years, we've happily been permanent residents here, and this is our only home. This is where we live. This is what we want to protect. But now we are alarmed. And I've heard a lot of words about us being unwelcoming. We don't want to keep people out. We want the scale of this project to be respectful of where we live. So I'd like to help everyone to visualize what is being proposed, because words are one thing, but if you see pictures of what this will come and look like, and it's not going to be the same as what's on Buck Road or Boyceville Road or any other road. It is something quite different, and I'd like to show you about it. So keep Olive rural. Yes, we want to keep Olive rural, and in fact, it's in the code of the Township of Olive that it should remain rural. So I want to run through some images. We're not against development. We're for responsible development, respectful development, and we welcome some houses here. We welcome new people coming in, but we cannot welcome the amount of mass that's being proposed. So I'd like to show you to the proper scale how this development will be a real change in character. From the point of view of density, we have a 2-mile road. Lower Salem Mill Road is 10,560 feet. Currently, there are 28 houses on it. Let's say that there are 14 on each side, just to get an average. So the average spacing is 750 feet between properties. So if you look on the diagram on the left, which is very diagrammatic, you'll see that 750-foot spacing is what we now have, this kind of randomly scattered series of houses. If you look at what's being proposed, it's a grid of 250-foot spaces, which is triple the density and triple the spacing, and it's different. It's definitely different. It cannot be denied that it's different, and it's different in a way that requires some thought from the planning board. So the aerial view on the left is the way it looks now. You'll see once in a while, you see some dots. Those are houses. Where I live is right that little blue pin there. So that's our driveway. And we walk and go past this road all the time. But when you superimpose the Seakill plan, you look something quite different. It's so unlike our neighborhood. This is the problem. It's not a problem of not welcoming people. So what is a development? So a production builder builds a community of homes based on a library of floor plans, each with a limited array of personalized options. And if you look at what they're proposing, this is 13 cookie cutter houses, which is unlike anything else for miles around. This is a change in character. There's no similar thing on Buck Road with all these identical houses squeezed together like that. Nothing like that. So let's focus on the 8 open field houses as submitted. These are the ones that are now in the open area where the farmhouse used to be. And I love that area. I love walking by there. I love looking at the mountains. past those fields. But when you put 8 houses there, 4 facing 4, and each house is going to have a garage. Garages go at the end of each driveway, of course, and most garages will be built, it would be prudent to build a 2-car garage. You're going to have outbuildings. What kinds of outbuildings? Garages, barns, studios, tool sheds, workshops, gyms, pool buildings, chicken coops. And also, if you look at their submitted plan, there are 5 of those 8 houses are identical model. This is a production activity that is not really the same as where we live. So the piano keys layout, and this has been remarked also by board members, in the open field lots, 4 houses facing off against 4 other houses. It's a very inappropriate suburban model. This is boxes against boxes. Yes.
Not to interrupt, Mr. Montiglione, you have just a few seconds left. Thank you.
Okay. So if you put them all together, these are 8 houses, 13 houses. They look like quite a little village, and a little village like that, if you compare it to Olive Bridge to the same scale, it's practically similar. So this is not appropriate to the middle of Sailor Mill Road. Now, the Olive Code says it has to be in harmony with the development pattern. Well, shoehorning these 13 houses into a quarter, 1,700 feet of Sawmill Road violates that concept of harmony. So what you have to look at is box 17A, which is the components may be different from or in sharp contrast to current surrounding land use pattern, check. And box 18E, which is that the proposed action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character. We want houses here. We would like to have neighbors, but we're not going to have them. And we're not going to welcome them or feel like it's a great imposition on us if with the mass and crowding that's represented in this. And so I really insist that, that everybody look at it carefully to see if we promote a seeker of positive declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montiglione. Thank you very much. And if you want to share that presentation with Janelle, that would be certainly.
We sent it to Dave Ettinger, and so you'll have it, and I think it would be good for people to kind of review it because those pictures really speak very powerfully than words.
Okay.
And I care about this place, and I want to make sure that it remains as nice as it is.
Thank you. So there was a great suggestion from my colleague, Ms. Heidi Emmerich. So if you've already spoken and you would be gracious enough to give up your Zoom slot, it would be helpful to allow some of the folks who couldn't attend under the cap of 100. So if you're able to do that and cooperate, that would be helpful to the public. So I just put that public service message out there. And with that, Miss Amy Cowell?
Kalal, that's correct.
Wow, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Amy Kalal, and I live at 246 Lower Sailor Mill Road, about 700 feet away from the proposed subdivision. My husband and I have lived here for 10 years, over 10 years now. You know, I don't really appreciate strangers on a Zoom call telling me I'm not a real resident. But anyway, we've spent a lot of time and money renovating our house and our surrounding property over the years. And all the while, we've been very careful to make sure that our changes fit with the existing natural landscape and the rural character of our neighborhood. So now, after all of our planning and all of our sweat equity, we're faced with an out-of-town developer who wants to drop a completely non-conforming subdivision onto our road. And I believe that this summer, you actually visited the old farm on Lower Sailor Mill Road, where, as someone mentioned earlier, there used to be one house and a few structures. And I believe Seakill might have given you a tour, which is actually really unfortunate because they don't live here and they couldn't possibly have given you the information or the perspective that you need to make the decision that you're tasked with. But you actually know, because you can see it with your own eyes, that this proposed subdivision does not fit here. You can see it on the maps. Philip just showed you. It doesn't take an engineer to see the problem. Today, I can freely hike on my street. I can walk with my dog. Minimal safety concerns. That's all going to change. And it's not just regular cars. It's increased garbage trucks, delivery trucks, and all the rest of it. There's also additional traffic and noise that's going to be generated by all the construction over the next 3-7 years, or however long it's going to take them to complete these houses. I actually got a taste of it this summer when I was literally forced off the road by a large truck going, 40 or 50 miles per hour, even on Sunday mornings. So we know with our own eyes that this subdivision is massively out of character with our neighborhood. There's not anything even like it in the town of Olive. So that's what we can see. But what about what we can't see? How is the subdivision going to affect our water quality? How is it going to affect Rochester Creek, which is a protected trout stream? How is it going to affect the Packham of Lye, which is a natural heritage area that's been designated as worthy of protection? How is it going to affect all the biodiversity resources located specifically near Lower Sailor Mill Road? These are just some of the potential adverse environmental impacts. And they're not abstractions. They're not just trivial environmental concerns for tree huggers. These are the very things that make Olive special and give the town its unique qualities. And most important to today's meeting, we don't have sufficient information about the potential impacts to these things. We just don't have it, and neither does the town. And I actually listened to some meetings where the developer kept trying to reassure you that they plan to take all these steps to mitigate these unknown, potentially adverse impacts. And I'm sure others are going to speak to this. And of course, the record surely speaks for itself. But a lot of what Seakill is suggesting just can't be enforced. And even more of what they say can't be verified, or it's not even true. Remember when they told you the second house was really just a guest house? That was a lie. How about all the times that Frank Dunn has told you he grew up on a farm in New Paltz? Well, so what? So he grew up on a farm. There's no assurance to that. He certainly hasn't designed a subdivision that bears any relationship to a farm. They're proposing to build 13 look-alike houses stacked on top of each other right near the road. They aren't including garages, woodsheds, tool sheds, or all the other things that people who live here actually need and have on their property. In fact, the lots are so narrow, it's going to be impossible for homeowners to build any of these structures once they figure out that they really need them. My point is that the subdivision design is the antithesis of a farm or anything reflecting the rural character of Olive. Now, I want to be clear, and I want to echo what Philip had mentioned. I'm not opposed to development. What I'm opposed is development that will drastically and irreversibly change where I live in the absence of a real investigation into the environmental impacts. And under seeker, you have a legal obligation to find a positive declaration. You cannot say there would be no adverse impacts. This isn't a difficult decision because what it really means is that you want to see more information. You want to take a hard look at the facts before approving something that is irreversible. It would be an utter travesty to greenlight this subdivision now, only to find out years later that my neighborhood and the town's environmental treasures sustained irreversible damage. And in addition to your legal obligations, I think you have a moral obligation to find a positive declaration. You are our neighbors and our fellow residents of Olive. And in this case, you're also the stewards of our environment. And Olive has a tremendous amount of beauty and natural heritage that we really have to watch out for and protect.
Thank you
Ms. for your time.
Thank you very much. Well timed. Thank you. So with that, Mr. Dagan, Daniel Dagan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. According to what we've heard, this project is going to be at least 5 to 6 more years of construction in an ecologically sensitive area. The cost to us, the neighbors nearby, and the residents of 5 years of increased noise and the traffic of dangerous construction vehicles on a small stretch of road in a quiet community needs to be balanced with confirmation through further research that the mitigation steps proposed are enforceable, will be enforced, and will be effective. We need to make abundantly sure that the whole project does not endanger precious environmental resources or neighboring residences. I have no doubt that if further research is done as a result of a positive declaration, the chances of a successful outcome for all concerned can be dramatically improved. In terms of the EAF, what stands out most to me is the following. In section 1E, math is math whether you are in Olive or New Paltz. According to Mr. Medenbach, part of achieving gentle impacts on the environment are that only 2 houses a year will be built over 5 to 6 years. Be transparent. The impact to the neighborhood and our quality of life of 5 to 6 years of construction is major. Maybe not in New Paltz or Latham, But to us here on this small road in Olive, it's not just a large impact, it's major. Check yes to this section. In section 3A, be transparent. This will create new water bodies near sensitive ecological areas. Nicholas Berger on October 6th warned, if they're not properly maintained, these basins could go downhill. So the impact of failure could be major. The covenants written by the developer relieve Sailor Mill LLC from future liability. Members of the planning board have already publicly stated that the town is not sufficiently capable of inspection, maintenance, or enforcement. So in section 3E, yes, erosion could result from failure of the catchment basins or the failure of the subsurface detention systems. The impact of this ecologically sensitive area could be major. Section 3I, yes, it may create major impacts. Other questions in section 3 should be considered thoughtfully. Finally, if the ecological impacts of a development of this magnitude in Olive, next to resources listed in the town's own natural resource inventory, demand conservation areas, then before any further building begins, allow independent experts to inspect and delineate the area. This is suggested in the town of Olive's own duly accepted natural resource inventory. This would assure we know what we're talking about in section 7. We know these areas are significant, so the potential for adverse and major impacts in multiple sections of section 7 exist. Since the area is adjacent to a wetland and a known area of significance, the appropriate emphasis on may and large is appropriate. 7A, B, C, and D should be checked yes. Thank you for your work, and we look forward to a positive declaration. And yes, over time, we look forward to welcoming our neighbors and an exciting outcome from this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dagan. So next up is Miss Nancy April, and she has a presentation to share as well. So Nancy, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi, thank you. I live about a quarter of a mile from the site through the woods over on Upper Sailor Mill. And it was my impression that this is the seeker hearing. So I have prepared my entire thing to refer to specific seeker rules. And I want to address the ridiculous premise of the draft DAF that this large development will not have a single negative impact on this land. The true impacts are, as I see, as follows. 11A, the impairment of the ecosystem. The close proximity of these houses to one another, along with the inevitable deer fencing that will essentially create a barrier in the middle of a wildlife corridor that stretches from the Pacoma across the Rochester to the swamps of the Beaver Dam and beyond to the high Catskills. That is the ecosystem that this project will disrupt. 7A and B refers to threatened species. Last week, I sent you a partial list of the 60+ species that I have seen locally over the last 30 years that I've lived here. On that list was 3 threatened species, most notably the bald eagle, who has taken a mate and is residing in the area. We see them daily. 7C and D, creatures of special concern and high priority species. Of these, I've seen 12 over the years, and I'd also like to note that Seakill's threatened species consultant listed as none 9 species of birds that I've observed in the area, and that's on top of several omissions that he made. So 7F, destruction of natural communities. First, I want to go to the, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. This is from the DEC. This is one of their resource mappers. This is the significant natural community, and you can see Lower Sailor Mill. The dark is the Pacoma, and the light pink is the range of the natural community. The second map is of rare species and plants. This is also from the DEC. The third map is biologically important areas from Ulster County. And you can see that it covers almost the entire north section of this lot. And last but not least is the NRI, the important diversity areas. You'll see the green crosshatching is rare plants. The blue is rare aquatic animals. The orange is rare terrestrial animals. And you see they go all the way up into the Rochester Creek. And most importantly, the solid yellow is the Catskill Mountain Significant Biodiversity Area. It covers the whole north side of this property. Lot 7, up and back. Lot 7 is locally known to be very wet. This is one of those valuable wetlands mentioned over and over by the NRI and speaks to 5D drainage modification and 11A natural impairment. You can't strip a property of all of its water, direct it into chutes, and expect it to be anywhere near the same ecological community. The areas of the two basins that are listed will need to be stripped of trees and reshaped, destroying this special habitat. Both basins are listed within their no-cut easement, which I might add is that unenforceable due to the lack of a third-party oversight. 3H and 3I concerns what happens when basins like these fail. At the October 6th meeting, Mr. Berger noted that he's seen these fail due to lack of maintenance. The basins will be the responsibility of the lot owner, basically leaving them also unenforceable and the Rochester Creek vulnerable to contamination. 7H and 11E, forest fragmentation and open space. The SWIP calculates ground disturbance at 15 acres in this designated significant biodiversity area. And
Hi, Nancy, if you could just finish up, your time is nearing.
I am finishing.
Thank
The
you.
2016 New York State Open Space Conservation Plan specifically mentions the Great Pacoma, Bly, and the buffer as being a critical area in need of protection. The Conservation Advisory Council recommends a 250-foot buffer on this and its report to the board. Now, in final, you can't predict with certainty that any problem will or will not occur, but you can be proactive to mitigate the risk. In this case, by a more sensitive planning of fewer houses. Back in August, Mr. Sorbellini spoke of balancing the needs of development with those of the community. He referred to this project as a seesaw out of balance. And that's all we're asking for is some balance. A positive declaration would go a long way to open up the conversation of compromise.
Thank you, Miss April. I appreciate your comments.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So up next is Mr. Warren Kleiman. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And then this
Yes,
will get ready for-
Clayman, but close, Dave. Thank you.
You got it, Mr. Kleiman. And then just on deck, in the spirit of pitchers and catchers, Miss Ratner, you're on deck. So go ahead, Mr. Kleiman.
Great, thank you. I'm Warren, and I live at 250 Sundale Road. I've been here for 14 years, and about 7 years ago, this became my permanent residence. My home is only 2,100 feet away from the western edge of the Sailor Mill Farm development, so I'm pretty close. And to Robert's comments, that's why the town lines are very close to this development. So, and unlike the other people that spoke, I'm actually super close and in a different town. Development is great. I think it's an amazing thing, both for the community and the town. And I'm not opposed to it, but I am firmly of the belief that it needs to be responsible and reasonable development. The first topic that I want to discuss is the impact on the plants and animals. And therefore, in my perspective, Section 7 of the EAF should be checked off yes. I'm talking about the bats. I always see so many bats after dusk and all the way through the evening. Your recently published Olive Natural Resource Inventory reports a specific reference to the northern long-eared bat and how, and I quote, retaining forest canopy, mature trees, and minimizing fragmentation of mature forest patches may be an important at INSPAC for local bat populations, end quote. This bat is a US and New York threatened species and high priority SGCN, which is a species of greatest conservation need. Further, the developer's own report highlighted the endangered Indiana bat as an important bat species specifically known to exist in this exact area. In the town's NRI on page 91, there is a discussion of impact habitat cores, map 19. And I quote, intact habitat cores are present throughout Olive. Outstanding or highest ranked cores at the county level are present in the large forests that extend from High Point to Samuels Point around the Ashokan Reservoir and to the Pacamavlai and surrounding habitat. This development is squarely in that area. So I ask you, how will material deforestation of 64.3 acres to build 13 new homes, that's over 23%, impact the survival of these endangered bats and other unmentioned species of animals and plants? The second topic relates to the impact on land and the extensive clear cutting that will occur for the proposed development. And the board should check yes to section 1 of the EAF because the proposed development will have a significant impact. The clear cutting that has already taken place at 192 Lower Salem Mill Road, and everybody has eyes and everybody could see that there was clear cutting, as well as at the second house just west of it, is a serious problem. And I understand that this may be in violation of the town ordinances already, which would require a checkoff of 17C in the EAF. I personally was appalled of seeing the clear cutting behind the new house, but not surprised, and it's for two reasons. Why? Everything I've seen on the social media postings related to this development quote that the amazing views that will be achieved, the amazing views of Mombakis and High Point, pictures and all. And what is also concerning is that more than half of the proposed home sites are in completely dense forest today. To get these amazing views in these densely forested lots, there will have to be some serious clear cutting for certain. The second reason I wasn't surprised is because Frank Dunn and Seakill have a history of clear cutting their properties to get the best possible views of the mountains and the highest selling price. One case in point, 85 Mill Rock, is a property that abuts my property at 250 Sundale. Seakill and Frank Dunn own that property, and they clear cut the entire 3.3 acres from north to south, east to west, in the hopes that it will sell because of the amazing views. My final topic relates also to the impact of land. The construction of 13 homes in a small area over a short period of time. The Mill Rock had 4 homes built in the last 12 months, 3 homes built by the same developer. The noise and disruption were unbelievable. I witnessed it. The heavy equipment going up and down the Mill Rock Road was constant, not to mention the dust, dirt that was generated by the machinery movement, as well as the noise from the actual construction of the homes. Further, the impact on the private shared road was severe and expensive to repair. Having lived through this for only 4 homes, the construction of 13 homes will certainly have a severe impact on the quality of life for all the neighbors for 3 years to 5 years to 6 years. Who knows? But it will be over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Mr. Klayman. If you could just wrap it up.
I just want to close. I just have one closing.
Yep, I've already given you an extra 30, so if you could just wrap it up.
Okay, so in the end, I am simply stating that the board and the community must have more information before any decisions are made. And and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Klayman. Sorry to throw you off your game. Just trying to keep it efficient.
That's okay.
Miss Anna Ratner, you're up next, and then that's followed by Miss Catherine Frank.
Hi, my name is Anna.
Hi, Anna, sorry.
I live on the Hairpin Turn right on Lower Sailor. And I'm going to start with my personal experience of just when the construction was happening. I guess it was late summer or middle of summer, but for the first time in the 16 years that I've been coming here. I actually was almost hit and killed by one of the construction vehicles as it made its way around our corner, which to get to our mailbox, I have to go through that corner every day. So my concern is that if for the next 5 to 7 years, these construction trucks are going by, that at least like something will need to be done on that corner, because it's incredibly dangerous for everyone who walks on the road, including my family who has to go to their mailbox. And my other concern is part of our land is there's a wetland that's been forming. And I just wanted to talk about the noise pollution of the construction and the vehicles on the road. So as you guys all know, Sailor Mill cuts both through the woodlands on either side as it divides the hilly woodland from the lower wetlands and swamp. The swamp across from the hairpin turn is an emerging, delicate, and tucked away ecosystem, which gives a quiet home to, as has been mentioned, a lot of rare species of plants and animals. There's been many studies on how noise pollution from roads and construction are detrimental to entire species of wildlife. The added noises of clear cutting, construction, and trucks, which during the summer construction would actually like shake our house as they would drive by on the road in like the earliest hours of the morning, have been shown to drastically reduce bird populations, disrupt bat echolocation, and throw off entire insect communities, which in turn will affect the entire wetland ecosystem. I'm happy to link to a few of the articles that I found that relate to basically our exact situation on Lower Sailor and Upper Sailor. I've seen foxes, rabbits, coyotes, and lone baby bears this year alone, using the road to get from the hilly woods to the wetlands and vice versa. More traffic on the road, both from the construction vehicles and possibly 26 new cars, I'm assuming, if each family has 2 cars, means that there's a lot more danger for those animals as they cross between the wetlands and the hills, and also for all of us as cars swerve to avoid animals in the road. And when I've been walking down to the wetland, I've noticed that I have to be as quiet as possible, because even just my footsteps will disturb any of the birds that are there. Just a few weeks ago, I wasn't even speaking and I walked down there and over 100 mallards just flew to get out of the swamp and waited until I was gone to come back. And a lot of the studies I was reading were just about how increased cars on roads will just like completely bring down bird populations. And so we all know that safe and relatively quiet habitats for animals, especially wetland animals, plants, and fungi, are becoming more and more scarce because of developments like this and other developments. And that the ecosystem here has just been slowly emerging. I've been watching it, and it's becoming more and more of a rare wetland ecosystem. And because it's in like this delicate phase of emerging, like having more water drawn from our water tables would just completely destroy that, as well as noise pollution from construction and cars, and also clear cutting. So yeah, I'm just mostly worried about the wetlands that not only are the Bly protected zone, but also just the ones that are between Upper and Lower Sailor and that connect directly to the back end of the development. Yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Well, thank you for your comments. They've been recorded. Appreciate it very much. So the floor is now Ms. Catherine Franks, and then Mr. Greg Keys, you're up next.
Thank you. I will want to share my screen if that's possible in a moment. I'm Catherine Frankie. I live on 96 Ricky Road, which is also Wynkoop Road. And we live less than a half a mile from the proposed development. We're not, it feels very uncomfortable to be accused of being opponents and to have people who've never met us say such really unkind things about us. So I'm sorry Mr. Cataldo is not on the call anymore. I think he kind of came and said what he wanted to say in a pretty hostile way and then left. But I wish he would be here to hear us as his soon-to-be neighbors and who we are and what neighborhood he's moving into, because we are a group of people who care about each other, care about the community, are not opposed to development, but care that the development that happens in our community is done so thoughtfully, and care about the planning board, that you have a responsibility that I know you take very seriously to make sure that the development in our community is done in a sustainable and thoughtful way. So I moved here almost 30 years ago. I was renting a place in Cripplebush, and then in 2001, I bought the house we're in now on Windcroop Rickey Road. When I bought the house, I traced the ownership all the way back to its original owners, the Trowbridge family, from the 1840s. We have one of the oldest houses in the area, and it's beautiful. The Trowbridge family farmed the land for corn, potatoes, and wheat. And Mrs. Trowbridge is buried over in the cemetery on County Route 2A, right near John Ingram's farm. I've gone over and visited her, thanked her for the house and for the energy she left us. So later, the Rickey family moved into the house, and the Rickey farm was a chicken farm that many of you may be familiar with who've been here a long time, for they were well known in the community as chicken farmers. So I just want to make 2 points now in the short time that we have that are about the proposed development. Not that I'm opposed to it, but just that a positive declaration under seeker should issue, and we should move to the next stage and just be careful with this land and with this community. We welcome new neighbors, but we want to be careful. The first is that the Ulster County Planning Board, Planning Department has identified the hamlets of Boyceville, Shokan, Olive Bridge, and West Shokan as the priority areas for growth. And if I can share just very quickly my screen.
You should be able to.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you'll give me just a second to find it.
Bottom.
Well, no, I know where that is. I've just got to find the thing I want to show you.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd think we know how to do this by now. So the planning board of the county, Ulster County, has identified those hamlets as the most important places for cluster development. The town of Olive has come to the same decision also. If you look on the right here, it says the town could designate feasible and ample sites.
Ms. Frankie?
Yeah.
You may not be sharing the document. What I'm seeing right now is a PDF of the speakers.
Well, you're so sweet to tell me that.
No worries.
Yeah, I know. I do this every day, and usually I'm on mute at this point, so.
No worries. We'll take a brief time
How's
out.
that? How's that? Does that look right?
It looks like a comprehensive plan with something circled on the right
There
column.
we go. So what we have here is the town of Olive itself talking about designating feasible and ample sites for future residential and commercial growth in Olive's existing hamlets. So what would be appropriate for a development like this is to do it in one of those towns. So the Solar Mill Farm does not further the priority of building clustered homes in the areas in our community that have already been earmarked for more dense residential housing. And for this reason, the town board should check the box, item 17 on the EAF, that this development at least triggers more of an inquiry about whether it's consonant with the community plans. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is the rural nature of the area. Philip Monteleone showed us maps that make it so clear that the proposed development will destroy open fields, will require clear cutting of trees. We've already seen this happening, as others have mentioned. It's thus destroying fragile habitat of the amazing animals that we live with and enjoy, and will also pose a risk to walkers and bikers due to traffic increase. The trucks, we've talked about the trucks for the construction vehicles over the next 5 years, but also consider the people who buy these homes, our soon-to-be neighbors. The inevitable traffic that's related to delivery of propane, oil, heating oil, Amazon packages, garbage pickup, pool maintenance, maintenance, landscapers, plowers of driveways like it's been snowing so heavily lately, plumbers when your pipes freeze, many other services. And this kind of traffic increase has not been taken account by the developer in his proposal for these 13 new homes. So with the effects on the wildlife, the water table, the groundwater, the traffic, the community character, the board should check yes on sections 1, 3, 4, 7, 11, 13, 17, and 18 on the EAF form.
Thank you,
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Frankie. So Mr. Keys, you're up, and then on deck is Mr. Anthony Borelli. Again, I apologize to anyone I'm mispronouncing your last name.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to the board. I live at the farthest end of Lower Salem Mill Road, next to the pond and approximately 700 feet from the proposed development. My wife and I moved here 11 years ago. We chose this quiet corner of Olive to make our home and ultimately retire to after looking at 35 houses across Ulster County. I'm a New York State licensed home inspector, radon measurement professional, and I'll complete my certification for New York State Building Safety Inspector and Code Enforcement Official in mid-May. I honed my skills while building homes for Habitat for Humanity since 2004 across many states. Obviously, I see a lot of houses, and I am in favor of well-managed development for the obvious reasons. But I have also seen irreversible damage unbridled developments can do to a community and to the environment without doing proper assessments of all the potential impacts it can have. I want to make 3 points tonight with my 5 minutes. First, too much weight has been given to the representation of the developer and third parties with personal and/or professional ties that there will be virtually no impact to our unique environmental resources and/or the charm and character of the neighborhood. As examples, requests for alternate plan designs by the board were ignored or explained away that a stone wall dictated what could or could not be done. In addition, we were told that we could have built 60 homes and that we should be grateful that it was 14, now 13. Let's be clear. This was never going to happen for the reason that they are unwilling to build the necessary roadways. This was always an empty threat, which should have been rejected out of hand. Seeker sets the standard, not the developer's false concession. Another, stormwater retention ponds were mandated by the DEC and the SWIP, but the DEC only got involved because local residents alerted them. These ponds fail all the time without proper maintenance. The solution proposed by CEQA is that the homeowners will maintain them. The town can't maintain them. They can't enforce it. What could possibly go wrong? Another, CT Mail demonstrated an open forum on January PB meeting that they know who butters their bread, certainly, with misleading and ludicrous comments about minimal impacts to the community, traffic, environment, while admitting they hadn't even been to the site. And during the February PB meeting, they proceeded to fill out an EAF line by line while taking dictation from CEQA representatives and relying entirely on their attestations of no or little impacts. I thought they represented the town. Perhaps the greatest sin of omission that night was EAF Part 2, Section 1E, when we learned for the first time in 7 months that construction will last 4 to 7 years. And the EAF threshold is 1. Second, the town, albeit doing the best it can with limited resources, isn't staffed to oversee a project of this magnitude and ensure compliance with the litany of assurances, covenants, and deed restriction the developer promises, or even enforce its own building code standards. Example, in the absence of an adopted town comprehensive plan, outdated zoning restrictions, weak code enforcement, the town is being taken advantage of. B, all the proposed covenants and deed restrictions are unenforceable, so worthless. There are no shortcuts short stops or checkpoints or altering the development plan later when estimates, attestations, assurances prove faulty or worse, intentionally false. The second house was built under the guise of being a guest house, making a mockery of our zoning parameters, planning capabilities, and our own code enforcement officers. Another well was drilled while no one in the town knew it was happening during a stop work order. Third, the DOS, DEC, and other agencies provide powerful tools and specific guidelines to assist town officials in making sound decisions while offering them protections under the law for observing them. Examples: if for no other reason than the extreme difference between Ted Fink's EAF Part 2 and CT Mail's and C-Kill's assessment demands further investigation by experts who are without skin in the game. Misrepresentation, sins of omissions, and falsehoods by C-Kill for the last 7 months I've captured in a spreadsheet. They're too numerous to count.
Hi, Mr. Keys,
Tonight,
just a
because my
moment.
time is
You're-
running out.
It
so
is,
I'm
yeah, you're
sending a
past your 5
spreadsheet
minutes.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. The floor is now Mr. Anthony Borelli, followed by Miss Carol Monteleone. The floor is yours, Anthony.
Okay, just try to figure out unmute here. Thank you. My name is Anthony Borelli. I'm at 101 Ricky Road, also known as Wynkoop Road, across the street from Catherine. I live on the former Ricky chicken farm. I live in a converted barn right up on the street. I'm sure you've seen it at the corner on a very small street, which is partly why I'm concerned about the development in terms of traffic and the increased activity. But I want to talk more about community character than anything else. The point I want to make is that zoning does not establish community character. Zoning has been brought up over and over again, but it should be clear that it does not establish community character. As you know, zoning, I should also say I'm a planner by profession. So it's something I do on a day-to-day basis. Zoning is often applied in broad brush and not a fine-grained approach that actually takes into consideration street-by-street conditions. And I think you would agree that the zoning on Lower Sawmill does not reflect existing conditions. So it should not be considered as a significant contributor to community character. In fact, it's irrelevant. The community character is established by existing conditions. In this case, the former farm, 64 acres. In fact, it's one of the defining features of Lower Sawmill Road. So the character of the road is in large part defined by the existence of that former farm. 13 new houses with potentially 13 new guest homes. In addition to, from what I understand, potentially 13 new accessory units on each lot would have to be analyzed. That's a huge difference between what's there now. So if you're talking about what's proposed and what exists, I think that delta is pretty enormous, not just in terms of character, but also other impacts in terms of intensity of use. So clearly, I think the proposed development is inconsistent with the predominant character of the area. Replacing a 64-acre farm with 13 houses and potentially 39 other dwellings is a big difference that needs to be looked at. And I also want to add that the proposed development, if it's approved as proposed, could be an undesirable precedent for future projects. As we all know, and as mentioned by previous speakers, land is for sale in our neighborhood, and we need to be aware of what lies ahead. So that those are my points. I really thank you for your time and your attention to this. I respect your responsibility, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borelli. Appreciative of your comments. So with that, the floor is Ms. Carol Monteleone's, followed by Mr. Stephen Keith.
Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to express our concerns about this project. I'm going to be very brief because I think that so many of my neighbors have been very explicit and very clear about what the concerns we have are. We've been here for over 30 years. We walk. I love going down to the pond, bird watching. It's a quiet road. It's a safe road. It's a place that people, mostly what you see is people walking or biking. Although since the development on Mill Rock Road a few years ago, and also the paving of Sundale Road, I've noticed a lot more traffic coming up our road, which poses a danger for walkers and bikers. And I just sort of feel like the increase in traffic that this new development promises is going to really change this from it's going to change Lower Salem Mill Road from a sort of natural walking place to a much more highly trafficked road. And I think the noise issue, both of construction and the increased traffic, will really impact the quality of life here. So I'm going to just cede to Steve, who's next, so that he'll have a chance to say what he wants to say. But thank you so much for listening to us.
You're welcome. And I'll just make a comment, Stephen Keith, before you speak. So just board members, just start thinking about a conversation we probably want to have in 15 minutes. So we have about 25 more speakers to go. So if you just do simple math, well, that's well over 90 minutes of additional dialogue. So just start thinking about maybe how we want to plot our path forward. So with that, Mr. Stephen Keith, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. My name's Stephen Keith. I'm an architect. I live at 31 Rocky Road with Roscoe Betzel. And our property is about 500 yards from the development site. This development as proposed is totally out of character with our neighborhood, our community. I would argue it's out of character with the town of Olive. But I specifically want to make the point that this beautiful area we're discussing, it's not just Lower and Upper Salem Mill Road, but it's Brown Road, it's Acorn Hill Road, Crumbill Road, Route 2A, Fly Road. It's a larger area, and there is basically nothing like this thing for miles around. This proposed development is clearly out of character with the southern half of the town. And I would urge the board to just recognize that fact and formally acknowledge it in the declaration. Thank you.
Sorry, I had to unmute the host. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith. Next up is Miss Karen Renucci, followed by Miss Ann Marcillo. So Karen, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you everybody for giving us the opportunity to have this conversation. I think it's been very productive and that we've really have established everything that's already been mentioned, all the boxes that would need to be ticked off on this application that will ensure us a positive response. So I think we've all been thoughtful, and this project needs a lot more scrutiny with all the points that have been made. I live at 16 Lower Sailor Mill, and also I've moved here recently from across the street as our family has grown. We've lived for 16 or 17 years, as Anna, my daughter, said, on the hairpin turn at 41. It was Father Divine's farm, and we have kept it as a farm because we came here to appreciate the rural character of this. And I really just want to stress the number 43. 43% increase in the number of houses. Everything that has been mentioned here, traffic, noise, impact on wildlife, every single box that's here, times that by 43 over a 7-year period. And that's why it's not that we're not welcoming. We do appreciate thoughtful development. It's going to happen. People build beautiful houses. There's enough room here for everyone, but not the way that this suburban style for the cheapness of being able to crack out as many houses as he could. Yes, I agree with what was said before. They threaten us. Oh, we could have put 63 houses here. That's a lie. And so we don't want to live in suburbia. That's why we're here. The planning board has done an excellent job over all these years to keep Olive and the entire town rural and be respectful with development. So I want to continue in that vein. And I appreciate everyone coming together because we are all concerned and we just want more scrutiny and we want a development that's going to reflect the character of this neighborhood. And I just, I really took issue with the gentleman who spoke about, and there's all these people who trust, who own these places. Our property is owned by a family trust. And he was referring to us because we have Brooklyn in the name of our trust. And we are very concerned with this community. And I really didn't like being disparaged in that way. There were a number of falsehoods that gentleman started, spewing out there. So I appreciate the community feeling that we all have and protecting this neighborhood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Manucci, for your comments. And with that, Ms. Ann Marsilio, you have the floor, followed by Mr. David Maddox.
All right. Hi, I'm Ann Marsilio. I live on Upper Sailor Mill at the end, right before you hit the turn to go to Lower. I've been living here almost 40 years. I lived in Crumville. I raised 3 children to be productive citizens, and I love the area. I love the people. I love everything about it, the nature. I just, I don't see 13 homes going in that particular parcel. I don't think it fits. I think the design of the layout is not okay. It's a quiet community. It's almost like it's tucked away, and it's always been that way, and that's what I liked about it. But I don't see how it will not affect the character of the environment. And according to Section 3J of the environmental impact statement, the applications of pesticides and herbicides, I believe that will have profound effect on the wildlife and the water quality. I've seen these things change. When I walk now, I feel like I have to jump out to the side of the road to avoid being hit by a car. One time when I was walking with someone, I told someone to slow down and they actually sped up. And this is a shortcut, actually, Lower Sailor Mill to Sundale will take you out to Queens Highway. It'll take you out to some Christmas tree farms. I mean, I must have counted about 50 cars with Christmas trees on their car this winter walking. It's not that I don't like people. It's the traffic is going to increase profoundly. And I just want you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marsilio, for your comments. Mr. David Maddox, you're up, followed by, oh boy, Jan Lori Goldman. Miss Goldman, you're next. So David, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to speak here, and thank you to the board for taking this process as seriously as you obviously are. We all recognize that you have a difficult job.
Thank you.
I am David Maddox, the resident of Graceway since 2015. I'm a PhD ecologist and have worked for state natural heritage programs, the Nature Conservancy, and been a participant in various development reviews such as this one, including endangered species surveys. The letter that you received from Gordon Svensson on our group's behalf is excellent. It's thoughtful, it's measured, it's comprehensive, and it includes with a positive declaration under the SECRA. It is clearly warranted. That the standard is that a potential for environmental impacts is enough to trigger the environmental impact statement process. Just one, and in this case, there are many more than one. So I fully support Ms. Svensson's letter and have three things to briefly add specifically on the natural environment and biodiversity. Number one, members among the board of you have noticed the significant changes, the change in the environment and social character of the area that would result from this planned development. It's already begun with the significant clearing of the forests. Multiply this effort across the whole development, and we can all imagine the changes to the area. We can all see the environmental impacts clearly. If we perceive the changes, then I assure you that the plants and the animals that reside in this place will also perceive them manyfold. Many of the environmental impacts that ecologists talk about, people like me, are difficult to see. They're about scientific detail. The changes proposed here are very large, and there's no doubt that the ecological character of the neighborhood would be deeply and adversely affected. With such environmental change, the social character of the area will be likewise degraded. If you can clearly see it, for the ecosystem and its inhabitants, it's catastrophic. Number two, there's a new and important contribution to the discussion we were having here, and that's the 9 February publication of the Natural Resources Inventory prepared by the New York Department of Environmental Conservation along with various scientists. It's a map, both conceptual and literal, of both the importance of the land, the very land we're talking about here, and also how the idea of forest fragmentation with areas of continuous forest or chopped into separate pieces or islands negatively affects the function of the entire olive ecosystem. I believe this document, newly available to us, provides us both scientific and policy support in the face of the extensive development proposals for a positive declaration under SECRA. We know that once destroyed, the ecosystem, the environmental and social character of this place, the ecosystem we are discussing here is not coming back. To me, this calls for caution and contemplation for the potential consequences before we experience those disruptive actions. 3, the developer commissioned an environmental survey of the land in question. I have done such surveys myself for endangered species and environmental impact, both for the government and for developers who were required to do so under EIS purposes. I have nothing against against the company or the person who did the surveys, but I am able to criticize it on method. As far as I can tell, he only surveyed one season. Such a method might work if you were surveying for a specific animal or plant that had a seasonal cycle. That's not the case here. The purpose of the survey was to be a broad assessment of the entire site. In fact, this consultant cites relatively an old report on biodiversity of the region. More recent ones exist. The species listed in the report leaves out a number of important species that I've seen myself. In part, this at least might be because he was here for only a limited time. I must also say that the environmental review is commissioned by the developer. I'm questioning the sincerity of neither the developer nor the consultant. I'm only saying that in a contested situation such as this, we all deserve an impartial survey by a neutral party. I want to close with a personal reflection, and that is regulations concerning development and its environmental impacts, both natural and social, are often not worded in ways that tilt toward the environment. They don't even tilt toward the communities, really. They're often vague, which leads to decisions that are, well, if we lose a little here, it's on the edge, just a little more here, what's the harm? Well, the harm is additive. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And that vagueness of regulation, we could also, as a society, also choose to tilt toward environment, towards community, and not reflectively tilt toward development, especially a development that assures massive change in environmental impact. In this case, we are handed an instrument in the SECRA process. Let us use that instrument to take a thoughtful and fact-based path and order a full, impartial environmental impact statement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. So, Ms. Goldman, I'm just going to ask you to hang on for a moment. So I'd like to just open this up to the board. So it's just call it 9 o'clock for rough numbers. There's 23 additional speakers. David Ettinger, that would include Mr. Tuckman, who just requested to speak. So the board, we had talked about suspending the secret public hearing and then continuing on. I think given the, and I don't think we've been, I think we're about a halfway point here. Let me just see how many have actually spoken up to this point. Yeah, up to this point, we're actually, 22 have spoken and we have 23 to go. So as a board, do we want to have some open dialogue about how to proceed at this point? Do we want to suspend and plot another time to continue? We're certainly hearing a range of feedback, but I'll pause and Steve, I'll ask you to speak first and then we'll open it up to the board. And again, Ms. Goldman, just ask for your patience for sure.
Personal opinion is given, especially that we overflowed the 100 limit, that we do need to adjourn and come back to this at a later date. It's clear we don't just have a few more speakers and we're not going to wrap this up in the next half hour or hour or so.
Heidi, Ed, Nick?
I'm in favor of that.
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah, I agree. Nick, I agree with what Steve said.
Heidi, please.
Yeah, he makes a good point about us not having the capability of having more than 100 people. So giving the opportunity next week to have additional, or whenever additional people join would be helpful, I think.
Okay, just unofficially without a vote at this point, are there any board members that see it differently at this stage? All right, so then I would propose the following. I would potentially make a motion that we let January Goldman be the last speaker of the evening. We suspend at that point the secret public hearing, and then we discuss, rescheduling. We okay with that?
Sounds good.
Sounds
All right,
good.
so I'm gonna go ahead, Stephen. I'm sorry.
No, I said sounds good, just agreeing.
Okay, so I'll make that motion, Janelle. I'll make a motion that after, I hope is this a Miss Jean Laurie Goldman?
Pretty good. That's
Thank
pretty
you.
good, Dave. Don't worry.
I'm going to suggest that we allow Miss Goldman to be the last speaker of the evening. More than likely, she'll wrap up right around 21:07. And that then the board discusses after that, when we want to plot the continuation of the secret public hearing. So I'll make that motion. Will someone second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Helene Grant is absent. So with that, Ms. Goldman, please, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, and the rest of the planning board. I really appreciate, I think you've heard this tonight, how grateful we all are to have a chance to speak. And we're hearing so many different points of view, different issues coming up. What I would like to do is to applaud my neighbors. I am so moved by hearing them speak. Quite honestly, we've been getting to know each other over the last year. We've met in backyards, socially distanced when we could to talk this through. And as you've heard, we're not opposed to development, but these, 13 houses directly on the road, it's not like they're tucked in, behind the trees like so many of our houses are. They're right on the road, right on top of each other. I want to speak to a couple of things that really concern me. One is the impact on the plants and animals, the number 7 issue on the EAF. I'm a bird watcher. I care deeply about the birds. I watch them migrate in the spring and the fall. I know their nesting and their breeding habits. It's just a very important part of our lives. I live at 96 Rickey in Wynkoop, very, very forested area, lots of undeveloped land around us. So I'm very concerned about that. And I would say that we should at least do a further investigation and check that box. The impact on transportation is a really big issue for me. Many of my neighbors know that I am a daily biker and a daily walker. And there has been an increased number of cars and trucks on the road. And when I say the road, and I think someone just made this point, Lower Saddle Mill is not its own kind of, bubble. Ricky Road is the shortcut to get to 2. So whatever's happening on Lower Saddle Mill, if there's a delivery truck, if there are logging trucks, if there are, suburban traffic, whatever it is, residential traffic, they're going by our road. And we live right also at a hairpin turn. And so when I'm walking on the road, I'm often kind of caught off guard because a car is coming speeding. They don't know the roads. And it really worries me. And I've had a couple of close calls, both walking and biking. And it's one of the great pleasures that I have being there, is having that experience of being out in the woods. The roads are really narrow. So I know you went out and looked at it. These are roads that if there are 2 cars, you have to move over for the oncoming car, to make sure that they have room to pass. So I'm concerned about that. The other thing that we've also heard about, there was a recent hit and run on Lower Whitfield, which is not far from where this development is. Somebody who did not know the area was driving really fast on Lower Whitfield. They hit someone who was out walking their dog. I think they're still in intensive care in the hospital. This was, a month or 2 ago. That has just terrified me. They did find the person who did it, but it's the kind of thing that we've never had that happen. So I'm very worried about that. The consistency with the community plans, that number 17A, this is in sharp contrast to how the land has been developed. It is in sharp contrast to how we live in this neighborhood. We are not opposed to development. You've heard that now 100 times, but we are opposed to putting a suburban development in this piano key style on Lower Saddle Mill, which cannot handle it. The road can't handle it. There'll be increased traffic in terms of police and fire trucks and whatever else has to come in. The community character is also something that really matters. Like, we live here. We live on these roads right on top of where this development is going to go. We walk and bike, we watch birds, we appreciate the wildlife, we chat with each other. When I walk every day, I see my neighbors, we stand and we chat. And I'm just worried that with the constant trucks going by over a 7-year period, that community character is going to be eroded, and we're going to lose that life that we so appreciate. So you have so many boxes to check. I know you only need to check 1, but I'm looking at 3, 13, 17, 18. And I appreciate all the time that you've given this project. And I would just urge you I just want to say one last thing. So many people who spoke at the beginning in support of the development talked about us being in opposition, that we were these unwelcoming neighbors. And all we're asking you to do, what we're really pleading for you to do, is to issue a positive declaration so we have more time and more information to understand the impact of the development. That's what we're asking you to do. So thank you so much for your time and for going so late tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Goldman, for your comments. So with that, we're not going to invite anyone else to speak this evening. The board is going to really convene an administrative session, and folks, you're certainly welcome to stay. But we're going to suspend the open comment period of the secret public hearing at this point, as you heard in that earlier vote. And we'll now discuss our schedule, and there's other competing priorities for our time with other projects in the town. And Janelle, that's what I'd like to discuss with you, as well as the other board members at this point. And do we need the vote that I've suspended that, Steve?
I would.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we suspend.
I'll second that. Tim?
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we suspend 20 sub 10, the secret public hearing. At this moment, we'll discuss a date for continuing it. So Tim is seconding that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Again, Janelle Helene Grant is absent. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so I guess, Janelle, let's talk about some competing priorities. We already have a planning board hearing for Bread Alone on March 2nd. I think that just because of the enormity of that project, I don't foresee a lot of public speaking out on that project, but it's just, there's a lot to go through, right? We haven't done a checklist or anything, so I wouldn't see that being anytime done before 7:30 on March 2nd. And then we have other competing priorities, as I was just sharing, right? We have the project with the glamping and primitive camping. We have Blair, we have Tadger, I believe we have Lane. What else is out there?
I think that that was pretty much what we have right now.
Are any of those, of course, they're all important, and I don't mean any disrespect to those individuals, but are there any burning platforms in terms of their timelines? Because certainly the folks that are associated with Sailor Mill, both the applicants as well as others, have certainly invested their time. So how does the board feel? How do we want to prioritize? Because I think this is the first time this has occurred that we've had limited bandwidth at this point.
So I just want to point out that with regard to the lanes application for both subdivision and site plan, they have been on the dockets with us for a year. And it's been on and off.
Yeah, but no offense, but they just got their act together.
That's correct. And I think it's because they are quite quickly nearing the court required answer date.
All right, but they have everything. So are they prepared?
Well, I've sent you guys everything that, and I think, they updated their subdivision map, which I think they've put on everything that you guys last asked of them.
I did not see a right of way for the driveway.
And I questioned Mr. Brewer, and it is there.
Okay.
There's like little dotted lines up the driveway, and he has a note up in the top right-hand corner that says 20-foot
Okay.
right of way.
Okay, fair enough.
I questioned that.
It's on there.
It's on the right-hand corner. You see it, Heidi?
Yep. Yep. Line table that
Yeah,
describes the
it's
center
under
line of the
diversity.
easement.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he did put that in. The site plan, I know she sat down with John Ingram and they did all of the numbers and things in it that was required. I don't know back and forth, if it's not exactly what I think that you're looking for, because I had suggested that that they put, where the trucks are actually parked and anything for that, but
I think their claim was that they were no longer doing business, and so that was not an issue.
well, no, they said they weren't doing sawmill business, so that wasn't the issue, but they are doing, they still are doing the excavation business. So that's why they had to do it as the excavation business, and they have now put down a description of how many trucks and backhoes and trailers and everything else they own and that sits on the property. But they did not mark out where they park them. I don't know if that's required, so.
Can I butt in here a minute? Rather than get into a lot of detail on all these things, I think we should leave the next meeting for all these other applicants, and I think we should reconvene the hearing on the 16th of March. That's just an idea, because we're never going to be able to get it all done, and I think we owe these other applicants a little bit of our time.
Yeah, you read my mind, Ed. I was just jotting that down myself. So Steve, I think you were going to say the same, and Heidi, Tim,
Yep.
Nick?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So are you thinking that we can touch base with everything that we've gotten so far? So,
Well, we've got a public hearing at 7:10, which is brought alone. We'll give ourselves 10 minutes at the beginning to breathe and do some administrative.
right, and the glamping thing is like the next oldest thing that.
Well, I'd like to get to the lanes.
Okay,
I'd like to get to the lanes next. I mean, give us, get them after the bread alone. Let's focus on the lanes, right? If they've got their act together, we can go through it. Don Brewer can, walk us through it. And then we can go to the camping.
okay.
Yeah, so we have a full slate even without the Sailor Mill project, so.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have Blair, and then you have, is it Tadger, if I'm pronouncing
Yeah,
that?
so though, yes, the Blair came in first and then Tadger came in second.
Yeah, so to Ed's point, right, there's 5 projects, minimally, at a minimum 20 minutes each, right? So, there's we're at 9 o'clock pretty much, so.
Okay,
So then that would push us to not accepting any new business for Tuesday, the 16th, to resume the seeker public hearing for Sailor Mill. So Mr. Bacon, are you on the line with us? Mr. James Bacon?
I did not see him earlier. I looked.
Well,
He was very early on, but he's not now.
Do we have to advertise that again?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, does it, I guess just, I'd like to just make sure that what we're suggesting doesn't put us in the town in any harm's way in terms of any time parameters or anything else.
I'm not sure that you would have to advertise because it was advertised for this evening. Anybody that intended to speak should have been on the meeting tonight and signed up or logged in. They are now all with us yet, I'm sure, and we'll know that it's going to advance to the 16th of March.
Yeah, but if someone comes out of the woodwork in the meantime.
But they shouldn't, I mean, it was projected to be this evening. So it doesn't matter if they come out of it 2 weeks from now. They weren't at the public hearing now, right?
I guess also remind people, though, that not everyone was able to get on. So
Right, that's what I'm more sensitive about.
Well, I can certainly put it back in a newspaper.
I think that would be the prudent thing to do.
Yes, let's mitigate any risk for sure.
Okay.
Not to downplay it, but it was only about 15 or 20 minutes total that we were at 100.
Yeah, it dropped pretty quickly, David, especially after Heidi suggested that to me, so.
But we don't know how many people tried to get on right away at 7 and then got frustrated or whatever. We
Yeah,
don't
that-
know. And without knowing, I do think that we should advertise a continuation out of respect for
Yeah.
those people, if
I'll put
any.
the public notice.
So let me wrap this back around just briefly. What do people feel, board members feel regarding the referral to the county then for Sailor Mill? We're going to postpone that yet until after the following.
I thought we had talked about making a declaration before we pass it on to the county, so.
Yep.
We have to let the hearing process run its course, and then we have to vote on which way we're gonna go, and then.
Yeah, I raised it because there was a discussion that we could in fact present the county with a draft. And depending on how long the process takes, it's not clear to me whether that's prudent or not, but
My feeling is we may want to run through some of those EAF sticking points again after reviewing all the comments before we feel ready, even as a draft, to submit to the county. Not that I want to delay anything any further than we have to, but that's my feeling is we may have some additional thoughts. Maybe we won't, but I think it should be discussed before we submit what we have now to the county. I don't think is quite fair.
so it sounds like consensus is to wait again until we've completed the public hearing.
That's what I'm hearing.
I think so.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so just to recap for the agenda for March 2nd, we have the 7:10 public hearing for Bread Alone, and then we're going to run down the lanes with the subdivision application and their site plan, the glamping site plan, Blair and Tagier's lot line and subdivision applications for first review.
Right, and then more than likely, we will conclude the meeting with, with a discussion just administratively around Sailor Mill.
Okay.
But so please note, we won't accept any new business. And I would say, Janelle, I would think for probably even for the first meeting in April, right, that's going to put us at, I think, April the 6th. We should probably leave that agenda open at this moment. So let's not make any commitments towards that agenda at this point.
Yeah, I haven't made any commitments. I'm just accepting the applications as they come
No.
in.
Yeah, understood, because I'm just thinking ahead, right? We may want to reserve that for maybe a work.
Because all these things that you're looking at are gonna be nearing public hearing.
Well, we're also gonna want to get some consultation from CT Mail, so Catherine and
Yep.
Chris, maybe in terms of a working session or whatever. So having said that, Catherine or Chris, do you have some comments or feedback? Maybe?
I think I kind of echo what other board members said, that there definitely were a lot wide ranges in comments, which is good for a board to make a decision. I would ask the board, is there anything that was presented that you feel that additional information is needed by the applicant? Again, because it's another 2 months until the rest of the public comments. Is there anything that the applicant can do in that time period? I know the last meeting you would ask them for some additional information in the traffic study, look at getting existing traffic counts. That is something that we agree with needs to be provided. I know that a lot of the public had similar concerns.
Yeah, so that's a terrific question, and I'm sure that's part of, I think, the decontrol and decompression of, okay, now that we've heard, we think about it and then we play back. And that's why I'm suggesting potentially that we do reserve that first meeting in April as a working session. But, there were some things I heard, some reoccurring themes, around sustainable and kind of the, I don't know if efficacy is the right word, but, when we start talking about the SWIP and the covenants on the lots, right? As I've admitted, our town doesn't do the greatest job, but doesn't have the resources, right, to monitor that stuff. So I think the client could do, really dig into how that's going to be supported over a long term. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from the audience is, the public isn't against this, but let's do it correctly. Let's really put forth our due diligence and let's have a long-term view, right? So I've heard, I've lived here 14 years, 20 years, 30 years, and yes, there's been change, but it's been controlled. And is this going to disrupt that? So it's vague what I'm saying, but Mr. Dunn, and if your team is hearing me, I would think that's where you kind of need to sharpen your pencil, if you will.
Yeah, I think one thing to suggest here, Dave, is that for, I'll say, more urbanized communities, the MS4 program does essentially mandate, most municipalities interpret it as a mandate. Any new stormwater management practices, whether it's on private property for commercial, industrial, or residential, to actually have a maintenance agreement with the town, where essentially if the property owner does not maintain that stormwater practice, that the town would be responsible to go in and do the maintenance and then back charge them on taxes, similar to some municipalities that might do that. If there's an unsafe building and the town needs to come in and demolish it, they would obviously notify the property owner, and then if they don't respond, they would do the work and then it would show up on their taxes. That is something that there's templates created by New York State DEC. So that's something that I definitely suggest the applicant and their attorney look at, because frankly, a lot of municipalities, whether you're rural or not, do not have staff resources to, go in and check these, and having the ability to, do the maintenance in the future if it's not done. That is something that a lot of communities have done in the past 5 or 10 years. And I think the other item that a lot of the public brought up was related to species, threatened and endangered species. So that, I think, is something for the board to look at, whether or not they would look at the report that's been provided, or if they feel that some additional information needs to be done. I think that's maybe more something to think about versus talk tonight. But that was one other comment that I saw came up, was a lot of information on the species.
The only thing I made a note of that I was thinking maybe useful is just a 1 page from the applicant on the timeline for construction for all the houses, which number, what year, when they think they're going to do that. Because we talked about it anecdotally, but it would be nice to have, nothing that they have to necessarily, commit to, things get delayed or whatever, but just so everybody has a real sense of which houses are going, when, in what order. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but that would be helpful.
A lot of that is dictated by the market. The market could go south next year and those lots could sit there for 10 years before they're developed. You know what I mean? There's no guarantee that they're going to build all those houses in a certain period of time. A developer never does that. He goes what the market will bear. So I don't think that can be regulated, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'm just going to float out a creative idea, and don't jump on me. But I did hear quite a few of the residents talking about the narrow character of the road and, the potential increase in traffic as I got on that soapbox at our last meeting. But I mean, is there an opportunity where Mr. Burns, are you still on? Brian, are you still on here? I mean, and I'm just going to float it out here, but maybe it's a Pandora's box, but is there an opportunity where Mr. Dunn and his team could look at the road and put a shoulder or something for bicycles? I mean, I'm just putting it out there. Could be silly.
Can you hear me, Dave?
I can now, yeah.
Yes. That roadway and surrounding roadways, Sundale, Wine Coop, Ricky Road there, they're so narrow to include a bike lane within. I don't see it. It's been pointed out by different people this evening. Certainly the hard surfacing of Sundale Road has certainly increased traffic without a question in the last couple of years. As far as construction goes, I said we kind of see it all over town, whether you have a new house site, you may have a driveway that's 75 feet in, or you may have one that's 750 feet in, which reflects in more hauling of material, more truck traffic. There's so many different variables that come into play on a particular site. These kind of closer to the Sailor Mill roadway, that would certainly weigh in there. There's so many different variables that would come into play. And like Ed said, as far as the market goes, how many of these sites would be developed at one point in time, it's so hard to say, But as far as I've lived here 43 years in town of Olive, and I've been all over town. I've worked for the town of Olive Highway Department for more than 25 years now, and I've seen building in all different areas in town, and it certainly reflects in that it impacts everybody in a different way. And I personally, as an Olive resident and plan on living here for years and years to come, I'm definitely vulnerable to everybody's input and the future of our town highways. All these construction sites, whether it be small construction, whatever, it reflects our roads and traffic by all means, but certainly it's taken into consideration. And as far as bike lanes, it's a residential area here, and moving on, as far as bike lanes and stuff, I think the area residents got to take in consideration, and I think our planning board has done a great job over the years, and certainly can take this into consideration moving forward here, the impacts, and then that's more of a planning a job than mine, and certainly the impacts of the roadway. I've spoke to Mr. Dunn in the past here as far as what would be required from a highway standpoint, but certainly from planning, it's a different side of the coin here.
Great, Brian. Now, this is Catherine from CT Mail. I just wanted to make a suggestion and some other projects I've had experience with. Generally, the northern side of the road kind of has an existing ditch line, but the southern side doesn't really have much until there's some trees. Would you, from a highway perspective, be amenable to at least asking the applicant to look at maybe extending a shoulder on, we'll say the south or east side of the road, particularly where the subdivision is, because I definitely think there's space. Likely not something for what you deem as a bike lane from an actual highway and code perspective, but just something additional, a compacted shoulder like you might see on county roads, just to give a little more space, particularly for pedestrian uses. Would that be something highway would support us, planning board, asking the applicant to look at?
I could see definitely that on the northern side, and I've already reached out to during a site visit there to Mr. Dunn as far as drainage goes and accommodating more shoulder on that ditch line side. And there's going to have to be, I already told him there needs to be extensive drainage to accommodate stormwater runoff and whatnot, and would definitely give shoulder there more than what is actually there at this point in time. Certainly.
Yeah, because I mean, again, as I explained early on, is that engineering is really at, frankly, I'll say, a 30 to 50% design. And that's common for seeker, the applicant doesn't go to final design at this point. But I definitely think there's an ability to kind of from a town highway perspective to mitigate drainage issues that are present and to possibly improve, not necessarily widen the pavement, because there are potentially negative issues when you widen a road too much, that it kind of says, hey, let's go faster. That narrow roads actually have traffic calming as a positive side, but obviously in this case, there's the negative side to a lack of pedestrian accommodations. I'm just thinking that the applicant could, we could ask the applicant to look at this, because I definitely think this is something that can be accommodated by this project that would assist in some of the comments that the neighbors have had regarding issues with pedestrian safety.
Sure. And go ahead, Ed.
I was just going to say, I realize there are maintenance aspects to this as well, but I would say the potential would be there, having looked at the property, for perhaps not expanding the shoulder of the road, but in fact developing a separate pathway up into the applicant's property some distance off the road that in fact would be even safer and better and maybe less expensive. I don't know, but would require the applicant, I'm sure, to develop some sort of a right of way or something and shared maintenance. I don't know, just put it out there.
Well, that's Steve, that's the spirit in which, and Catherine, thank you for picking up on that, right? It's just trying to find that amicable middle, approach. So just so the public knows, for those of you in attendance, Mr. Brian Burns is the Town of Olive Highway Superintendent. No offense, Brian, you're an awfully popular guy, but just to make sure everybody knows who you are.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, Catherine, that's exactly what I was after. Board members, any other comments in terms of Catherine's question, feedback, something that caught your
It just one question, actually, just thinking, maybe this is a question for Brian, but just thinking about sort of extending the roadway there, would that be just in front of the property we're talking about, or the entire length of the road? Because
yeah, Tim, that's a good point, because the issue is that the applicant only has control over the frontage of their property. There are cases where it's determined by the planning board that there's a substantial traffic issue off-site that then the applicant would have to mitigate, say an intersection, maybe half mile away. But in terms of strictly the ability to say put in a widened shoulder or some sort of pedestrian accommodation, at this point, I would suggest the board ask the applicant to look at the feasibility of it and determine if it's acceptable in just the land they control. Because again, asking an applicant to do work offsite, it happens, but you need to explain why you're asking them to do that.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
Tim and Catherine, also, if I could just weigh in on that as well, certainly I think anything off the roadway would be beneficial, from walking, biking, whatever. And if that was taken in consideration in by the applicant, I think that would be great.
Thanks.
I think just one other topic I had, and that's that we heard from several people that they felt there were inadequacies in the wildlife study that was presented. So I'm not quite sure, what we need to do to address that to our own satisfaction, but
Sure, yeah, Steve, I put a note down to speak to our scientist at CTML tomorrow morning regarding that. And if he has any suggestions. I believe some of the suggestions were that the study was done in one general time of year. There were other suggestions that historically wildlife had been seen in that area that wasn't picked up in the study. So I will reach out to our specialist and let you guys know if there's any suggestions on if we would suggest that there be additional studies done.
sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. Anyone else?
No, I was just going to say, is if Catherine can go over the comments tonight and highlight the numbered line items that are in question and give them a little more consideration between now and our next public hearing session, that would be helpful. Maybe we just relook at some of those, like the wildlife.
Sure, yeah, my plan was to kind of, and again, a lot of the direction normally, the question of, I say the board can direct the applicant to do X. If the board is okay with, me summarizing some of the comments that are technical in nature and providing them almost directly to the applicant to say, hey, these are the items that we suggest you do. I just kind of need that guidance because normally the direction would come from you guys unless you state it's okay for CTMail to have discussions with the applicant.
I think it's as long as there's transparency to the board, which there has been to date, Catherine. And, I will say this about the applicant. I mean, I guess they've been in front of us now for well over 6 months. I mean, not that I'm advocating for them, but they've always put forth a harmonious approach, right? They're not trying to be disruptive with any type of purposeful agenda. So I think, you're following, if you will, Ed's advice of, you leveraging your expertise and kind of prioritizing, if you will, of, based on what we've heard, what can the applicant do to adjust, right? To me, is supported by this board based on what you're hearing tonight. So,
Great.
As long as we have transparency in the process, I don't see any issues.
Sure, no, I'll definitely do that. And again, I feel that the month timeframe between the two sessions, we'll call it, that's the applicant definitely, I think, has time to address a lot of these, which is beneficial to the public as well. A lot of people have questions, and if it can be answered, that is beneficial. So we'll work on just sending a brief letter that kind of itemizes what we suggest they do. But again, to the applicant, it's all going to be stuff we're discussing now.
Yeah, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, board, please. But I mean, what I didn't hear tonight was an absolute confrontation that, it's a yes, no, right? This isn't a binary. This is more about, I came here through change. Others should have that opportunity, but let's be very sensitive, very deliberate in the way we go about it. That's what I'm hearing. I mean, call me foolish, but that's what I'm hearing. Well, the board's quiet, so maybe I'm just foolish.
Yeah, and I think the only other item that needs to be discussed by the board is something that is less specific. There's a lot of comments about community character. That's always a tough one for boards for any project. Again, the project beats zoning. So I didn't know if the board wanted to discuss if they needed to see anything additional from the applicant. But that's kind of one of the ones that we generally ask the board to really provide your feelings, because it's less of a technical item under seeker and more of a character issue.
Well, that's where feelings are volatile, candidly. I mean, I'm seeing our hamlet being, sunsetted by some votes across our town board. And, when I sit here as a co-chair of the planning board, what is the character, right? Boyceville's going to be forever wild. So the character of that was a town for forever, right? And now it's going to be green fields in perpetuity. So, Sailor Mill Road, it's residential. It's going to be more residential. Is it going to be different? It's going to be different. But if we can arrive at a harmonious conclusion here, you know, to me, I think the character in the town of Olive is fluid. And I think to land at a different conclusion is a tough position to defend when you look across the town of Olive. That's my perspective, board. Anyone else?
Well, I think that all these discussions highlight the need for overtime, and I think the public can help drive this for updates to the zoning and potentially relook at a comprehensive plan. People referred to the draft comprehensive plan that was never implemented, so you know it's great to refer to it, but it's not in force at this point. So you know, it's just all input taken into consideration at this point.
There's a lot of change going on. A lot of disruptors out there.
Okay, so I'm just writing down notes and I want to make sure I have accurately, I just want to be able to convey this to the applicant formally. So we would ask them to look at for traffic, which was discussed 2 weeks ago, to provide existing traffic counts for the road network. To look at adding a shoulder at this point, just in front of the parcels they control, really looking at pedestrian accommodations, you know, anything that would assist with calming traffic, making the road continue to be pedestrian friendly as the neighbors have discussed. For the threatened and endangered species, I will reach out to our professional to see if there's anything that he suggests the applicant look at. I can tell you that U.S. Fish and Wildlife and DEC have both essentially said there are species that are proximal to the property, particularly in the Vly, but that the parcel is not being developed, we'll say, in the wetland in the Vly. So I will just see if there's anything additional that he suggests. And then from a stormwater perspective, I'll ask the applicant to look at a stormwater maintenance agreement, and again, similar to the MS4 program. And again, it'd be something whether the town wants that. You know, for more developed urbanized communities, the state regulation has been forced on them. It's been forcing them now for about 15, 16 years. It's a little bit different for Olive where you don't have that mechanism. So putting that in place is a good idea, I think, to make sure that the stormwater basins are maintained, but does the town have the resources to administer that? And that's a question maybe for Highway, again, for Brian. So that's something I definitely suggest the applicant take the lead in providing to the town versus CT Mail providing it to the town. So yeah, so those 4 things. Anything else?
Not from my perspective. I think you've captured it.
I think the aspect of widening the road is kind of going against what the public is saying, because they want to keep the area rural, and I heard them say, you know, suburban. And when you start widening,
yeah, agreed. I think actually widening the paved part of the road is a bit detrimental. I'm just looking at, can we take one side of the road, particularly the we'll call it the south and east side, that has a little more flat space, and actually put, you know, a strip of a shoulder. I personally have that in front of my house. It's not a lot, but it could be something that you could walk, you know, a dog, or, you know, walk on the shoulder versus on the pavement. But again, widening the pavement, I'm not suggesting at all, because that just, you know, that's not what is in the area. And it does encourage faster speeds when you widen a road. So kind of a give and take from that. But again, this is with the applicant's responsibility to research these issues and provide the board responses. You know, we can give them suggestions, but it's ultimately they need to come back to us with some suggestions. That's all I got, Dave.
No, that's a lot. Thank you. So David Enger, are you going to look into seeing if the license can be expanded above 100? Because I'm just trying to avoid the trick box on March 6th, potentially, of, being exposed to, well, people couldn't speak.
I was just doing the research on that and I don't see it happening. In order to do that, you have to buy 10 licenses for $5 more per month than we're paying. We have 2 licenses. So buying 8 licenses just for that is probably not going to happen. I'll investigate more. I'll do what I can. I'll see if I can convince Zoom to give us any kind of one-off disposition, but I'll be surprised if I can make it happen.
Okay, and then could you just socialize that then, or Janelle, could you socialize this with Victoria Reed? Because ultimately, I would like the town board to be aware of this because, it could be a point of vulnerability for us, right? In terms of the public hearing, I don't know I know there are attorneys in our presence, and there's certainly more experienced and wiser than I am. So I just want to protect the board here.
Yeah, I know during non-COVID times, essentially, I think the general rule is that you find an accommodation large enough to house all the people who wish to participate. So.
Yeah, so we're not meeting that threshold is what you're saying, Steve, right now, right?
That's correct.
I will take this to the town board as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you, okay, thank you, Victoria.
Well, I'm here the whole time.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay. Do we just want to hang out to be 10 o'clock again, or are we?
No. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Well, I will second that, and I will also thank everyone for your cooperation and patience. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.